Welcome. Tonight our journey takes us not to the familiar battlegrounds of Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, nor to the icy plains ruled by mammoths. We venture deeper into the quieter, stranger corners of deep time, into the dusty archives where nature stored away its most peculiar experiments, its most baffling creations. We are embarking on a voyage to meet the creatures that time forgot, the ones that defy easy categorization, the truly strange, extinct animals. Think of evolution not just as a steady march towards perfection, but as a vast, sometimes whimsical, sometimes utterly bewildering workshop. For billions of years, life has been tinkering, experimenting, throwing countless forms at the great wall of existence to see what sticks. We remember the successes, the creatures that led to the familiar forms of today. But what about the others, the rough drafts, the dead ends, the designs that seem drawn from dreams or nightmares? Tonight, we wander through evolution's lost and found. We will encounter creatures with 5 eyes and a grasping nozzle, animals that walked on spikes, sharks with jaws like spiral saws, amphibians with heads shaped like boomerangs, and reptiles that learned to glide on wings unlike any bird or bat. We will meet giants that defy belief, millipedes as long as cars, birds with teeth, and mammals that seem cobbled together from spare parts. These are not monsters from mythology. These are real creatures that once breathed, hunted, and lived upon this very planet, inhabitants of forgotten oceans and lost continents. Their strangeness is a testament to the boundless creativity and perhaps the occasional eccentricity of the evolutionary process. They challenge our assumptions about what life should look like, reminding us that the path of evolution is not always straight, and its solutions are not always elegant by our standards. Sometimes they are simply wonderfully weird. Exploring these lost forms is not just a journey into the bizarre, it is a journey into the very nature of life itself, its resilience, its adaptability, its endless capacity for novelty. It is a quiet exploration of possibilities, of paths not taken, of biological questions asked and answered in ways we could never have predicted. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the globe to explore these hidden wonders of deep time. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, perhaps the sound of ancient waters lapping on a shore ruled by creatures beyond our imagining. Let the familiar world fade. Let go of the day's sharp edges. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let us open the dusty drawers of evolution's cabinet of curiosities and meet the creatures that time tried to forget. Our first stop takes us back, way back, to the very dawn of animal complexity, to a time when life was truly throwing everything at the wall. Our journey begins far back, roughly 508 million years ago, in the midst of the Cambrian period. The Earth is a vastly different place. The continents are unrecognizable, scattered fragments in shallow, warm oceans. And in these waters, animal life is just beginning its first great burst of complex diversification, the Cambrian explosion. This was a time of intense evolutionary experimentation, a biological Wild West where nature seemed to be trying out almost every conceivable body plan. Many of the fundamental blueprints for modern animal groups emerged here, but alongside them arose countless strange, failed, or simply baffling experiments. One of the most famous and perhaps most perplexing of these early experiments comes from the extraordinary fossil beds of the Burgess Shale in Canada. It is a small creature, yet one that stretches our very definition of what an animal should look like, Opabinia regalis. Even its name hints at its strangeness. When the paleontologists who first described it presented their findings, the reconstruction was reportedly met with laughter from the audience. And it's easy to see why. Opabenia fits neatly into no modern classification. It seems less like an ancestor and more like something dreamt up, a creature sketched in the margins of evolution's notebook. Let us try to picture it now, drifting perhaps just above the silty floor of that ancient Cambrian sea. It is small, only about 4 to 7 centimeters long, perhaps the size of a large shrimp. Its body is segmented, soft, with a series of lobe-like flaps extending downwards along its sides. These flaps likely undulated, propelling the creature slowly, gracefully through the water. At its rear, a tail fan, perhaps composed of 3 pairs of upward-pointing flaps, likely helped with steering or stability. So far, perhaps vaguely reminiscent of some primitive arthropod or annelid worm. But then we arrive at the head, and this is where Opabenia departs entirely from the familiar. Mounted on the front of its head were not 1 pair of eyes, but 5. Yes, 5 individual eyes, perched on short stalks, likely providing a wide, perhaps almost panoramic, field of vision. Imagine those 5 stalked eyes scanning the murky Cambrian waters, looking for prey or sensing danger from multiple angles simultaneously. And extending forward from beneath these eyes was perhaps Opabenia's most extraordinary feature: a long, flexible proboscis, or trunk, almost like that of a tiny, segmented elephant, but utterly different in its function. This proboscis, perhaps as long as a third of the creature's entire body, was hollow, ridged, and ended not in nostrils, but in a menacing, grasping claw. This claw bore prominent spines, clearly designed for seizing and manipulating objects. What was this bizarre apparatus for? The proboscis was likely highly mobile, capable of twisting and turning, reaching out far ahead of the creature's body. Paleontologists believe Opabenia used this incredible tool to hunt. Imagine it drifting just above the seabed, its 5 eyes scanning the mud below. It spots a small, soft-bodied worm or other invertebrate hiding in the sediment. The long proboscis snakes down. The claw opens, grasps the unfortunate prey with its spines, and then retracts, bringing the meal back towards a mouth located underneath the head, facing backwards. It was a feeding mechanism unlike anything else known before or since. A delicate, remote-controlled hunting arm combined with a wide-angle surveillance system. Opabenia seems to have been a relatively rare inhabitant of its ecosystem, its fossils far less common than those of trilobites or other arthropods in the Burgess Shale. Perhaps it was a specialized predator occupying a narrow niche, or perhaps its soft body simply did not preserve as readily. Its very existence is a profound lesson in the sheer contingency of evolution. It represents a body plan, a way of seeing and interacting with the world that ultimately led nowhere. There are no 5-eyed, trunk-clawed creatures swimming in our oceans today. Opabenia was an experiment, a beautiful, baffling, and ultimately unsuccessful one. It challenges our assumptions, forcing us to recognize that the forms life takes are not preordained, not necessarily steps on a ladder leading towards complexity or familiarity. Sometimes, evolution simply tries something strange. To contemplate Opabenia is to glimpse the sheer, unbridled, almost alien creativity of life's earliest chapters, a time when the rules were still being written and almost anything seemed possible. A 5-eyed phantom drifting silently through the dawn of animal life. From the same ancient seabed, the same remarkable window into the Cambrian explosion preserved in the Burgess Shale, comes another creature so bizarre, so difficult to interpret, that its very name reflects the profound confusion it initially inspired. Hallucigenia. If Opibinia was baffling, Hallucigenia seemed for a time to defy biological logic altogether. Picture this tiny enigma, perhaps only a centimeter or two long, a creature seemingly cobbled together from mismatched parts. When first described in detail in the 1970s, paleontologists struggled immensely to make sense of its fossilized remains. The initial reconstructions depicted a creature almost dreamlike, walking along the seafloor on pairs of sharp, stiff spines, like tiny stilts. Arching above its long, tubular body was a row of waving tentacles, interpreted perhaps as feeding appendages reaching up into the water column. It looked like something conjured from a fever dream, hence the name Hallucigenia, evoking hallucination. This interpretation, however, presented profound biological problems. How could an animal walk effectively on rigid spikes? What purpose did those dorsal tentacles serve? Where was its head? The creature seemed almost deliberately nonsensical. But the story of Hallucigenia is also a wonderful story of scientific discovery, of how new fossils and new ways of looking can radically alter our understanding of these deep-time puzzles. Finds from fossil sites in China preserving specimens with greater detail, and a careful re-examination of the original Burgess Shale fossils eventually revealed the truth, a truth perhaps slightly less fantastical, but no less strange. The paleontologists had reconstructed it upside down. Those stiff spines were not legs, they were defensive armor, pointing upwards from the creature's back, a formidable deterrent against predators like Anomalocaris. And those waving dorsal tentacles, they were legs, pairs of delicate, clawed, flexible legs known as lobopods, extending downwards from the soft, tubular body, allowing the creature to actually walk, albeit perhaps slowly and carefully, across the muddy Cambrian seafloor. Even identifying the head proved challenging. For a long time, a rounded blob at one end was interpreted as a simple, featureless head, but closer examination using powerful electron microscopes on the Chinese specimens revealed a more defined structure at the other end, a small, subtle head with simple eyes and a mouth leading to a gut that ran the length of the body. The blob at the other end? Likely just decay fluids or gut contents squeezed out during the fossilization process. So, the modern picture of Hallucigenia emerges, a small, worm-like creature, perhaps related to modern velvet worms, onychophorans, or tardigrades, water bears, part of an ancient group called Lobopodians. It walks slowly on multiple pairs of soft, clawed legs. Its back is protected by a fearsome array of tall, sharp, mineralized spines. Its small head, equipped with simple eyes, probes the sediment, perhaps searching for particles of food or scavenging on organic detritus. Imagine this tiny, spiky walker moving deliberately across the Cambrian mud. Its movements are likely slow, cautious. Its primary concern is perhaps not speed, but defense. Those spines would make it an unappetizing, potentially injurious mouthful for any predator attempting to swallow it whole or bite into it. It is a creature built for passive resistance, a living pincushion navigating a dangerous world. Even with this revised understanding, Hallucigenia remains wonderfully strange. Its combination of soft, flexible legs and rigid, sharp dorsal spines is unique. Its exact place in the tree of life, its relationship to other Cambrian oddballs and modern phyla, is still debated among scientists. It represents another fascinating Cambrian experiment, a creature exploring the possibilities of soft bodies combined with hard defenses, of walking on numerous small limbs while presenting a prickly exterior. Like Opibinia, its specific body plan seems to have been an evolutionary dead end, leaving no direct descendants in the modern world. Hallucigenia's story is a powerful reminder of the challenges of interpreting the deep past from fragmentary fossil evidence. It shows how our initial perceptions can be skewed, how even the most bizarre arrangements might hide a functional, albeit alien, logic. And it underscores the sheer, almost playful creativity of early animal evolution, a time when life seemed to be trying out every imaginable combination of spikes, legs, eyes and mouths, filling the ancient seas with creatures that continue to inspire wonder, confusion, and a profound sense of the deep, strange history of life on Earth. A spiky phantom, finally walking right side up through the Cambrian dawn. Lurking in the same ancient Cambrian waters as the five-eyed Opabenia and the spiky Hallucigenia was another creature, vastly larger, undeniably predatory, and initially just as baffling to the scientists who unearthed its scattered remains. This was Anomalocaris, the abnormal shrimp, a name that hints at its confusing history, but utterly fails to capture the bizarre majesty and likely terror inspired by this giant of the early seas. For many years, Anomalocaris wasn't recognized as a single creature at all. Its body parts, discovered separately in the Burgess Shale and other Cambrian fossil sites around the world, were so unlike anything known that they were classified as entirely different organisms. Imagine paleontologists finding strange, circular, fossilized rings resembling pineapple slices, but with a complex, tooth-lined opening in the center. They classified these as a type of fossil jellyfish, calling them Peytoia. Elsewhere, they found spiky, segmented appendages, looking somewhat like the dismembered body of a shrimp or some unknown arthropod. These were named Anomalocaris itself, the abnormal shrimp. And scattered amongst these finds were large, flattened, lobed bodies, lacking any obvious limbs or heads, which were sometimes interpreted as a type of sea cucumber or other soft-bodied enigma, occasionally classified under the genus Legania. It took decades of painstaking work, the discovery of more complete specimens, and a brilliant feat of paleontological detective work in the early 1980s by Harry Whittington, Derek Briggs, and Simon Conway Morris to finally piece the puzzle together. The jellyfish wasn't a jellyfish, it was the circular, tooth-lined mouthparts. The abnormal shrimp wasn't a whole shrimp, it was one of a pair of large, spiny, grasping appendages located at the front of the head. And the sea cucumber body was the main torso of the creature to which all these parts belonged. Suddenly, from these scattered, misunderstood fragments, a complete and truly extraordinary animal emerged. Anomalocaris was revealed not as a collection of separate oddities, but as a single, large, highly sophisticated predator unlike anything else in the Cambrian seas. Let us try to picture it now, perhaps gliding powerfully through the water column, its immense eyes scanning the depths below. It was, by Cambrian standards, a giant. Some species, like Anomalocaris canadensis, may have reached lengths of up to a meter, perhaps even more, making it one of the largest animals on the planet at that time. Its body was streamlined, flanked by a series of flexible lobes or fins running along its sides. These likely undulated in waves, propelling the creature smoothly and perhaps surprisingly quickly through the water, like a giant swimming centipede or a fleshy cuttlefish. At the rear, a fan-like tail structure would have provided stability and steering. At the front of this body was a distinct head, dominated by two remarkable features. First, a pair of large, complex, compound eyes mounted on stalks. These eyes were incredibly advanced for their time, possessing perhaps thousands of individual lenses, granting Anomalocaris exceptionally sharp vision, far superior to the simple light-sensing organs of most of its contemporaries. Imagine those huge, multifaceted eyes swiveling, scanning the environment with an acuity previously unknown in the history of life. And extending forward from beneath these eyes were those two formidable grasping appendages, the original abnormal shrimp. These segmented arms were lined with sharp spines, acting like fearsome grappling hooks, perfectly designed for seizing prey. They were likely strong and flexible, capable of snatching trilobites off the seabed or capturing other swimming creatures in the water column. Between these arms, on the underside of the head, was that circular mouth part, the fossilized pineapple slice known as petoia. It was a ring of hard plates surrounding a central opening lined with sharp, inward-pointing teeth or spines. This structure likely did not function like a crushing jaw, but perhaps more like a grasping, squeezing sphincter, capable of holding prey firmly while perhaps sucking out the soft parts, or maybe capable of cracking the shells of smaller trilobites. Put together, these features paint a picture of a highly effective apex predator, arguably the first large actively swimming hunter in Earth's history. Anomalocaris possessed the size, the speed, the incredible vision, and the specialized weaponry to dominate the Cambrian food web. It likely preyed upon trilobites, prizing them off the seabed with its spiny arms. It may have hunted soft-bodied worms and other primitive creatures swimming or crawling nearby. Its presence would have exerted immense evolutionary pressure on its contemporaries, perhaps driving the development of harder shells and more sophisticated escape strategies in creatures like the trilobites. Anomalocaris and its relatives were widespread, found in Cambrian rocks from Canada to China to Australia, indicating they were a highly successful group for tens of millions of years. Yet, like so many Cambrian experiments, their specific lineage eventually died out, leaving no direct descendants. They were a unique solution to the challenges of predation in those early seas, a combination of arthropod-like appendages, unique mouthparts, and advanced eyes, assembled into a body plan unlike any other. To contemplate Anomalocaris is to witness the dawn of active predation on a grand scale. It is to see evolution equipping creatures with the tools for pursuit, capture, and consumption in ways never before seen. It is a beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien glimpse into the world just after the invention of animals, a world ruled by giant eyes, spiny arms, and the silent, efficient hunt in the ancient murky waters. The abnormal shrimp was, in truth, the Cambrians' beautifully weird super-predator. We leave behind the murky, experimental waters of the Cambrian with its five-eyed phantoms and abnormal shrimp. Our journey now takes us forward in time, roughly 150 million years later, into the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes. Life in the oceans has become vastly more complex, more active, and arguably more dangerous. The early, tentative vertebrates we glimpsed in the Cambrian have exploded in diversity, giving rise to myriad forms, including the first true sharks and the vast lineages of bony fish. But ruling over these Devonian seas, particularly during the later part of the period, was a group of creatures so bizarre, so heavily armored, and so terrifyingly equipped that they seem like something conjured from a medieval bestiary rather than a natural ecosystem. These were the placoderms, the plate-skinned fish, and the undisputed king among them, the apex predator that defined the sheer brutal power of this lineage, was Dunkleosteus. Let us try to picture this monster, perhaps cruising slowly through the warm, shallow seas that covered much of the continents during the Devonian, around 370 million years ago. This was not a fish in the way we typically understand the term. Forget sleek scales and flexible bodies. Dunkleosteus was a living tank, a biological battleship. The front third of its body, including its massive head, was encased in thick, interlocking plates of solid bone, forming an impenetrable suit of armor. This head shield was articulated, connected by a unique joint that allowed the skull roof to hinge upwards as the lower jaw dropped downwards, creating an incredibly wide gape. And the size? Dunkleosteus was immense. While exact dimensions are debated based on fragmentary remains, primarily those incredible head shields, Conservative estimates place the largest individuals at around 6 meters or 20 feet long, perhaps weighing over a ton. Some reconstructions suggest even larger sizes, potentially approaching 9 or 10 meters, placing it among the largest vertebrate predators the planet had seen up to that point. But the truly defining and most terrifying feature of Dunkleosteus lay within its mouth. It had no teeth in the conventional sense. Instead, the edges of its powerful jaws were lined with exposed, sharpened plates of bone, extensions of the cranial armor itself. These functioned like immense, self-sharpening guillotine blades. The front plates formed pointed fangs for piercing and gripping prey, while the side plates acted like shears, capable of slicing through flesh, bone, and even the armor of other placoderms. Imagine the bite. Biomechanical studies suggest Dunkleosteus possessed one of the most powerful bites of any creature that has ever lived, perhaps rivaling or even exceeding that of Tyrannosaurus rex or the giant shark Megalodon. The unique hinged skull allowed it to open its mouth incredibly rapidly, perhaps in less than a 50th of a second, creating a powerful suction force that would draw unfortunate prey directly towards those devastating bony blades. Then the jaws would snap shut with crushing force, shearing through almost anything caught within. What did this armored behemoth eat? Likely anything it wanted. Its immense size and terrifying weaponry placed it at the very top of the Devonian food web. It probably preyed upon large fish, including the early sharks that shared its waters. It undoubtedly hunted other, smaller placoderms, its bony jaws capable of cracking their armor. Ammonites, crustaceans, perhaps even the first large tetrapods venturing into the water, all would have been potential meals. Fossil evidence, including partially digested fish, remains found associated with Dunkleosteus armor, confirms its predatory nature. How did it move? That massive armored head suggests it was likely not a fast, agile pursuit predator like a modern tuna. It was probably a slower, more deliberate cruiser, perhaps relying on ambush tactics or simply its sheer size and power to overwhelm its victims. Its hindquarters, unarmored and known only from rare impressions, likely tapered towards a powerful tail, providing the thrust for its movements. Dunkleosteus represents the peak of placoderm evolution, a lineage that dominated the world's oceans for tens of millions of years during the Devonian. They were an early, highly successful experiment in vertebrate armor and jaw structure. Yet, despite their reign, the placoderms ultimately vanished entirely at the end of the Devonian period, victims perhaps of changing ocean conditions or competition from the rapidly evolving sharks and bony fish. They left no direct descendants. To contemplate Dunkleosteus is to witness a different kind of predatory perfection, not the sleek speed of a shark, but the brutal, inexorable power of an armored battering ram equipped with bone-shearing blades. It is a creature born of a world where defense, in the form of heavy plating, was paramount, and offense evolved in terrifying lockstep. It is the face of the Devonian deep, armored, immense, and ruled by a mouth that was not filled with teeth, but with the sharpened edges of the skull itself. A true monster from the age of fishes. From the armored giants of the Devonian, we journey forward again, crossing another great boundary in Earth's history, the Permian-Triassic extinction, the great dying that wiped out Dunkleoprion and so much else. We emerge into the early Permian period, roughly 290 million years ago, the age when the supercontinent Pangaea reigned supreme. The oceans surrounding this vast landmass, the Panthalassa and the Tethys Sea, were recovering, slowly refilling with life. And among the survivors navigating these waters was a creature whose fossil remains present, perhaps the single most bizarre and enigmatic dental arrangement known to science, Helicoprion. The name means spiral saw, and for decades, that is almost all that paleontologists knew of this creature. Fossils of Helicoprion are typically found not as complete skeletons. Its cartilaginous body, like that of modern sharks and rays, did not preserve well, but as strange, coiled whorls of fossilized teeth, resembling a perfectly symmetrical spiral galaxy or a tightly wound buzzsaw blade. Imagine discovering such an object embedded in ancient rock, a continuous spiral of sharp, triangular teeth, getting progressively larger towards the outer edge, all fused together at their bases into a single, curving structure. What kind of creature could possibly possess such a thing? And more bafflingly, where in its body did this extraordinary structure belong? For over a century since the first tooth whorls were discovered in the late 1800s, scientists proposed wildly different reconstructions. Perhaps the spiral sat on the creature's snout, a coiled horn used for defense or display. Maybe it adorned the tail fin, a strange, serrated weapon. Some even imagined it perched on the dorsal fin, a bizarre spinning crest. The most common early hypothesis placed the whorl in the lower jaw, curling downwards and outwards like a strange external saw blade, perhaps used to slash at prey. But none of these reconstructions seemed entirely convincing from a functional perspective. How could an animal effectively hunt or even simply live with such an awkward, external spiral of teeth? The breakthrough came much later, with the advent of advanced imaging technologies like CT scanning applied to exceptionally well-preserved fossils where the tooth whorl was found associated with faint impressions or remnants of the surrounding jaw cartilage. These scans, particularly work done in the 2010s, finally revealed the astonishing truth. The tooth whorl belonged entirely inside the mouth, specifically within the lower jaw. It wasn't an external weapon, but an internal, continuously growing conveyor belt of teeth. Let us try to picture the living Helicoprion based on this modern understanding. It was likely a large shark-like fish, perhaps reaching lengths of up to 10 meters or 30 feet, making it one of the top predators of the Permian seas. It belonged to a group of early cartilaginous fish called Euchondrocephali, distant relatives of modern sharks, but more closely related to today's ratfish or chimeras. Its body was likely streamlined, perhaps resembling a modern shark in overall form, with fins for steering and propulsion. But its lower jaw was unlike anything else. Imagine the lower jaw composed of cartilage, as in sharks. Within the central symphysis, the point where the two halves of the jaw meet at the front, the teeth grew continuously throughout the animal's life. But instead of shedding old teeth as new ones erupted, like most sharks, Helicoprion's teeth remained fused together at their roots. As new, larger teeth formed at the back of the jaw joint, they pushed the older, smaller teeth forward. And because of the curved nature of the jaw cartilage, this forward progression forced the entire tooth row to curl downwards and then inwards upon itself, forming that characteristic spiral whorl within the floor of the mouth. The oldest, smallest teeth remained tucked away deep inside the spiral, effectively stored within the jawbone, while the newest, largest, sharpest teeth formed the functional cutting edge along the outer, upper curve of the whorl. The upper jaw likely possessed flattened, crushing teeth, or perhaps simply closed down onto the spiral saw of the lower jaw. How did this incredible apparatus function? The exact mechanics are still debated, but the internal placement strongly suggests it was used for processing prey inside the mouth. Perhaps Helicoprion specialized in hunting soft-bodied cephalopods like ammonites or squid, which were abundant in the Permian seas. Imagine it capturing an ammonite. As it closed its mouth, the spiral saw in the lower jaw would rotate slightly backwards and upwards, slicing through the soft body of the cephalopod against the upper jaw or palate, effectively cutting the prey into manageable pieces or perhaps extracting the soft parts from the shell. The whorl acted like a combination saw and conveyor belt, processing food with terrifying efficiency. Helicoprion was clearly a highly successful creature, its fossils found in Permian marine rocks worldwide, indicating a long reign and a wide geographic distribution. It survived the Great Dying, persisting well into the early Triassic, a testament perhaps to the effectiveness of its unique feeding strategy in the recovering, emptier oceans. Yet eventually, this bizarre evolutionary experiment also came to an end. Helicoprion vanished from the fossil record, leaving behind only those enigmatic, beautiful, and utterly perplexing spiral saws. To contemplate Helicoprion is to marvel at the sheer, almost baroque inventiveness of evolution when it comes to teeth. It is a creature defined by a single, astonishing anatomical feature, a puzzle that took over a century to solve. It reminds us that the fossil record is full of solutions to life's challenges that seem almost impossibly strange from our modern perspective. A giant shark-like fish with a rotating buzzsaw embedded in its lower jaw, silently cruising the ancient seas surrounding Pangaea. Leaving the spiral mystery of Helicoprion behind, our journey takes us further back still, deeper into the Paleozoic era, to the Ordovician and Silurian periods, roughly 480 to 420 million years ago. We return to those ancient shallow seas that teemed with life long before Pangaea formed, oceans like the Iapetus and the Reich. This was the age we glimpsed earlier, dominated by sessile filter feeders, the brachiopods paving the sea floor, the crinoids forming delicate underwater gardens. But ruling over this seemingly passive world, cruising slowly through the water column like living torpedoes, were creatures of immense size and simple, brutal geometry, the giant orthoconic nautiloids. We met their coiled descendants, the ammonites, briefly in our Pangaea journey, but these were the ancestors, the pioneers of cephalopod dominance, and they wore their shells not in elegant spirals, but stretched out straight, like colossal chambered ice cream cones. The term orthocone simply means straight cone, and it refers to a variety of ancient straight-shelled cephalopods. Among the largest and most impressive were the endocerids, particularly genera like Endocheirus, or the perhaps even larger Cameralcheiras. Let us try to conjure an image of one of these leviathans hanging silently in the Ordovician water column. Forget the complex coils of later ammonites. Imagine a single, long, gently tapering cone, constructed of calcium carbonate, stretching for meters through the water. The size of these creatures is staggering, based on fossilized fragments of their enormous shells. While complete specimens are exceedingly rare, estimates for the largest individuals reach lengths of 6, 9, perhaps even close to 10 meters, 30 feet or more. This ranks them among the largest animals on Earth during the early Paleozoic, undisputed apex predators of their time. This immense shell was not solid. Like the later Nautilus and Ammonites, it was divided internally into a series of chambers by walls called septa. The living cephalopod, a creature likely resembling a large squid or octopus, with tentacles, sharp beak-like jaws, and sophisticated eyes, occupied only the final, largest chamber at the open end of the cone. The preceding chambers were filled primarily with gas, connected by a tube of living tissue called the siphuncle. By carefully regulating the amount of gas and liquid within these chambers, the orthocone could precisely control its buoyancy, allowing it to hang effortlessly at any desired depth in the water column, like a perfectly balanced submarine. It didn't need to constantly swim to avoid sinking. It could simply float, neutrally buoyant, waiting. How did it move? At the open end of the shell, surrounding the head and tentacles, was likely a funnel-like structure called the hypernome. By forcefully expelling water through this funnel, the orthocone could achieve jet propulsion, moving backwards through the water, the large, heavy shell trailing behind its soft body. This was likely not a system built for sustained high speed, but perhaps for deliberate, controlled movements, for adjusting position, or for short bursts of acceleration to ambush prey or escape danger. Imagine the perspective of a trilobite scuttling across the Ordovician seafloor. A vast shadow falls from above. Looking up, it sees the immense tapering cone of an Endocheirus hanging silently, almost motionless, in the water column far above. Then, perhaps triggered by movement or scent, the creature stirs. A cloud of water jets from its unseen funnel. Tentacles, perhaps 10 or more, unfurl from the opening of the shell, reaching down. Sharp, parrot-like beaks snap open and shut. For the trilobite, or perhaps an early jawless fish, or a large eurypterid sea scorpion, this descent would be a terrifying, inescapable doom. These giant orthocones were likely the dominant predators of the Ordovician and Silurian seas. Their sheer size placed them at the top of the food web. Their sophisticated cephalopod eyes gave them excellent vision. Their tentacles and beaks were formidable weapons. Their ability to control buoyancy allowed them to patrol the entire water column, from the surface down to the depths, with minimal effort. They represent a different kind of marine dominance, not the agile speed of fish, nor the crushing power of placoderms, but the slow, patient, inescapable presence of a living battleship, a buoyant fortress armed with grasping tentacles and a slicing beak. Their fossils, particularly the large chambered shells, often preserved as internal molds called cyphuncles, are found in marine rocks of this age worldwide. They are silent monuments to a time when the straight line, not the spiral, was the ultimate expression of cephalopod power. Like the placoderms that followed them, these giant orthocones eventually declined, perhaps facing competition from the evolving jawed fish, or succumbing to environmental changes like the late Ordovician glaciation. Their straight-shelled body plan gave way to the more compact, perhaps more maneuverable coiled shells of the ammonites and nautiloids. But for tens of millions of years, they were the undisputed kings of the ancient seas. To contemplate Camaraocharas or Endocheirus is to imagine an ocean ruled by slow, silent, geometric giants, immense cones drifting through the water, embodying the simple, profound, and utterly alien strangeness of life in the deep Paleozoic. The straight-shelled leviathans ruling from their buoyant thrones. We rise now from the ancient Paleozoic seas, leaving behind the giant orthocones and spiral-jawed sharks. Our journey takes us forward again, but to a different kind of environment. Not the open ocean, but perhaps a shallow, brackish estuary, bordering the vast coal swamps of the Carboniferous period, roughly 300 million years ago. Here, preserved in the remarkable Mazon Creek fossil beds of Illinois in the United States, lies one of the most utterly perplexing, stubbornly enigmatic creatures in the entire fossil record, Tullimonstrum gregarium, affectionately known as the Tully monster. Its very name speaks to the mystery. Tully's monster, named after Francis Tully, the amateur fossil collector who first discovered it in the 1950s. And a monster it truly seems, not perhaps in size. It was relatively small, typically only 10 to 35 centimeters, or 4 to 14 inches long, but in the sheer, bewildering weirdness of its body plan. It looks less like a single animal and more like a surrealist collage assembled from leftover parts. Let us try to build its image in our minds, based on the flattened, often faint impressions left in the ironstone nodules where its fossils are found. The body is soft, vaguely torpedo-shaped or slug-like, lacking any obvious fins, scales, or shell. It seems almost featureless, giving few immediate clues to its identity. Then, extending from one end, presumably the front, is a long, stiff, yet likely flexible proboscis or snout, perhaps accounting for a significant portion of the creature's total length. and at the very tip of this strange extended snout is a small claw-like structure, lined with tiny, sharp teeth or denticles. Imagine a grasping claw on the end of a drinking straw attached to a slug. And as if that weren't strange enough, projecting outwards from the sides of the main body, roughly midway along its length, is a rigid bar or stalk, and perched at the ends of this crossbar are two small dark oval structures, interpreted as eyes. Yes, eyes on the end of a rigid stalk extending sideways from the middle of the body, completely detached from the head region with the proboscis and mouthclaw. Try to picture this creature swimming. How did it move? Perhaps by undulating its soft body like a worm or a simple fish. How did it see? Did that rigid eye bar offer panoramic vision or some other strange sensory advantage? How did it feed? Did it probe the muddy bottom with its long proboscis, snatching small invertebrates with its terminal claw? Or did it perhaps latch onto larger creatures like a bizarre parasite? For decades after its discovery, the Tully monster defied classification. It was so strange, so unlike anything else known, living or extinct, that scientists simply couldn't agree on where it belonged in the tree of life. Was it a bizarre mollusk, perhaps related to slugs or snails? Was it a strange type of segmented worm? Was it an arthropod relative, like Opabinia? Or was it something else entirely, representing a failed evolutionary experiment, a phylum all its own that vanished without a trace? The mystery deepened. Despite thousands of specimens being found, all from this one specific fossil locality, none seemed to preserve the internal details needed to definitively place it. Then, in the mid-2010s, several independent studies, using advanced imaging techniques and analyzing the faint chemical and structural traces within the fossils, proposed a truly surprising answer. They found evidence of a notochord, a primitive backbone-like structure, gill pouches and muscle segments arranged in a V-shape, features characteristic of vertebrates, the group that includes fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Even more specifically, the researchers argued that the Tully monster's anatomy, particularly the arrangement of its teeth and its simple fin structures, subtly preserved in some specimens, placed it among the earliest, most primitive vertebrates, the cyclostomes, or jawless fish. This would make it a bizarre, soft-bodied relative of modern lampreys and hagfish. Imagine that. This alien creature, with its eye stalks and claw-tipped proboscis, might actually be a fish, albeit one that radically diverged from the typical vertebrate body plan. A fish pretending to be an invertebrate chimera. This vertebrate hypothesis seemed for a time to solve the riddle. But the enigma of the Tully monster persists. Subsequent studies have challenged the vertebrate interpretation, pointing to inconsistencies in the evidence, reinterpreting the supposed vertebrate features and suggesting that perhaps the original invertebrate hypotheses, maybe a strange mollusk or some other protostome lineage, were closer to the mark after all. The scientific debate continues. The Tully monster remains stubbornly resistant to easy answers. It floats in our understanding, suspended between major branches of the animal kingdom, a testament to the fact that the fossil record still holds profound mysteries, creatures whose basic identity eludes even our most sophisticated modern techniques. Tullimonstrum gregarium is more than just a strange fossil. It is the official state fossil of Illinois. It is a symbol of scientific curiosity, a reminder that the deep past can still surprise us, can still present us with puzzles that challenge our fundamental understanding of life's possibilities. To contemplate the Tully monster is to embrace the unknown, to acknowledge the limits of our knowledge, and to marvel at the sheer, almost playful weirdness that evolution is capable of producing. A soft-bodied riddle drifting silently through the Carboniferous estuaries, its stalked eyes scanning a world we can only dimly imagine. Leaving the baffling enigma of the Tully monster behind, We venture back into the Permian period, roughly 290 million years ago. We return to the age of Pangaea, the world dominated by the rising dynasties of synapsids, our own distant relatives. We've already met Dimetrodon, the iconic sail-backed predator of this era. But Dimetrodon was not alone in experimenting with extravagant dorsal architecture. Sharing the ponds, swamps and riverbanks of early Permian Pangaea was another creature, belonging to an entirely different branch of life that independently evolved its own remarkable, though perhaps less famous, sail. This was Prehistoric, the flat porcupine, a name referring perhaps to its broad body and the prominent spines rising from its back. But this was no mammal relative, nor even a true reptile. Prehistoric was an amphibian, a member of an extinct group called the temnospondyls, distant relatives of modern frogs and salamanders, but often much larger and more heavily built. Let us try to picture this creature, perhaps lurking in the shallows of a Permian waterhole somewhere in what is now Texas or Oklahoma. It has a broad, flattened body, perhaps about 1 meter or 3 feet long, superficially resembling a stout, short-legged crocodile or a giant salamander. Its legs are relatively small and weak, suggesting it was primarily aquatic or semi-aquatic, more comfortable in the water than moving clumsily on land. Its skull is wide, flat, and heavily textured, covered in pits and grooves, perhaps indicating it was covered in tough, armored skin, similar to a modern crocodile. Its eyes are positioned high on its head, perfect for peering just above the water's surface, while the rest of its body remained submerged, waiting for prey, likely fish or smaller amphibians and invertebrates. But rising dramatically from its back, running from just behind the head almost to the tail, is its defining feature, a large, striking sail. Like Dimetrodon, this structure is formed from greatly elongated neural spines growing upwards from its vertebrae. In life, these bony rods were undoubtedly covered in skin, likely rich in blood vessels, forming a prominent fin or crest along the creature's back. The immediate question, of course, is why? Why did this amphibian evolve a structure so remarkably similar, at least in basic form, to that of its contemporary, the unrelated synapsid predator Dimetrodon? This is a stunning example of convergent evolution, nature arriving at similar solutions independently in different lineages, perhaps in response to similar environmental pressures or ecological opportunities. The function of Prehistoric's sail remains just as mysterious as Dimetrodon's. Was it for thermoregulation? As an amphibian, Prehistoric was undoubtedly cold-blooded, reliant on external sources to heat its body. Perhaps the sail, turned broadside to the Permian sun, allowed it to warm up faster after emerging from the cool water, gaining an energetic advantage in the mornings. Or perhaps it helped it shed excess heat when basking on the banks. The rich blood supply implied by grooves on the fossilized spines supports this idea. Or was it primarily for display? Perhaps the sail was brightly colored, used by males to attract mates or intimidate rivals. Perhaps it helped different species of sail-backed amphibians recognize each other. Its sheer size and visual prominence certainly suggest a role in communication or signaling can't be ruled out. Some have even suggested it might have served as a fat reserve, like the hump of a camel, storing energy for lean times in the harsh, seasonal Pangaean climate. Or perhaps it simply made the creature look larger and more intimidating to potential predators, a form of visual defense. The truth likely involves a combination of these factors and may remain elusive. Imagine Prehistoric now, perhaps half submerged in the murky water, only its raised eyes and the top edge of its bizarre sail visible above the surface. It waits patiently. A fish swims too close. With a sudden lunge, its broad jaws snap shut. It was likely a sit-and-wait predator, relying on camouflage and stealth in its watery home. Prehistoric represents a fascinating side branch in amphibian evolution. While other temnospondyls grew to enormous sizes, becoming crocodile-like river monsters, Prehistoric took a different, more visually extravagant path. It thrived for a time in the early Permian ecosystems, a strange, sail-backed contemporary to the rising synapsids. But its lineage, like so many early tetrapod experiments, eventually faded, leaving no direct descendants. It stands as a reminder that the age of Pangaea was not just the story of the synapsids. It was a complex tapestry woven from many different threads, including bizarre amphibians finding unique ways to survive and perhaps even flourish, however temporarily, in a challenging world. A flat-headed, sail-bearing amphibian, silently watching from the water's edge, another strange and wonderful creature from evolution's lost gallery. We linger for a moment longer in the early Permian swamps and fern prairies of Pangaea, surrounded by these early experiments in terrestrial life. We have seen the sail of the predator, Dimetrodon, and the remarkably similar sail of the amphibian, Prehistoric. But evolution, it seems, was particularly enamored with dorsal fins during this period. There was yet another prominent creature, sharing this same world, that sported a magnificent sail, yet belonged to a different lineage and pursued an entirely different lifestyle. Meet Edaphosaurus, the pavement lizard, a name referring to its densely packed, crushing teeth. Like Dimetrodon, Edaphosaurus was a synapside, placing it firmly on our own distant branch of the vertebrate family tree. But unlike its famous predatory cousin, Edaphosaurus was a herbivore, and its sail possessed an additional layer of bizarre ornamentation that makes it perhaps even stranger than Dimetrodon's. Let us picture Edaphosaurus now, perhaps browsing placidly near the water's edge, somewhere in what is now North America or Europe, around 190 million years ago. It is a large animal, reaching lengths of up to 3.5 meters or nearly 12 feet. Its body is stout, heavy, barrel-chested, built low to the ground, supported by thick, sprawling legs. It moves with a slow, deliberate gait, clearly not designed for speed. Its head is remarkably small compared to its bulky body, almost disproportionately so. And its teeth immediately signal its gentle nature. Instead of the sharp fangs of Dimetrodon, Edaphosaurus possessed broad, peg-like teeth lining its jaws, and perhaps most importantly, dense batteries of flattened, crushing teeth on its palate and inner lower jaw, the pavement that gives it its name. This dental apparatus was clearly designed not for tearing flesh, but for grinding tough, fibrous plant material. Edaphosaurus was one of the first large, dedicated herbivores among the synapsids, perhaps feeding on ferns, cycads, or the abundant horsetails that grew in the wetter Permian environments. And then there is the sail. Like Dimetrodon, Edaphosaurus possessed immensely elongated neural spines rising from its vertebrae, forming a tall, dramatic fin along its back. In some individuals, this sail could reach impressive heights, perhaps over 1 meter tall. In life, it too was undoubtedly covered in skin, likely rich in blood vessels. But the sail of Edaphosaurus had a unique, almost whimsical feature absent in Dimetrodon. Projecting outwards from the sides of the long vertebral spines were numerous small bony crossbars or tubercles, arranged almost like yard arms on the mast of a ship. These crossbars ran horizontally, sometimes singly, sometimes in pairs, giving the entire sail a knobby, almost thorny appearance. Imagine this creature, a large, slow-moving, barrel-bodied herbivore with a tiny head, munching placidly on plants while sporting this immense, ornate, crossbar-studded sail on its back. The visual is undeniably strange, almost comical. What was the purpose of this even more elaborate sail? The same questions arise as with Dimetrodon and Prehistoric. Was it for thermoregulation? The crossbars would have significantly increased the surface area of the sail, perhaps making it an even more efficient radiator or solar collector. Warming up quickly in the morning would certainly be advantageous for a large, likely cold-blooded herbivore needing to spend long hours processing low-nutrient food. The rich blood supply indicated by grooves on the spines and crossbars supports this hypothesis. Or was it primarily for display? Did the crossbars add a layer of complexity to visual signals? Perhaps they helped stiffen the sail, making it appear more impressive during dominance contests or courtship rituals. Maybe different species of Edaphosaurus had different patterns or sizes of crossbars, aiding in species recognition. The sheer decorative strangeness of the crossbars certainly hints at a role beyond simple heat exchange, or perhaps, as some have suggested, the knobby texture offered some minimal protection, making the sail harder for a predator like Dimetrodon to get a clean bite into, though this seems less likely given the sail's probable fragility. Edaphosaurus was clearly a successful creature, its fossils relatively common in early Permian rocks, indicating it thrived for millions of years alongside its predatory sail-backed cousin. They represent two different paths taken by the early synapsids, both experimenting with this dramatic dorsal structure, but adapting it to vastly different lifestyles. One a fearsome hunter, the other a peaceful plant eater. The existence of multiple, unrelated lineages evolving such similar yet distinct sails within the same time frame and environment remains a fascinating puzzle. It suggests that perhaps the environmental conditions of the early Permian, the specific temperature ranges, the intensity of the sunlight, the structure of the ecosystems somehow strongly favored this particular anatomical solution, whether for thermal balance, visual communication, or some combination thereof. Edaphosaurus, the gentle giant with the knobbly sail, stands as another testament to the bizarre beauty and evolutionary creativity of the age of Pangaea. It is a reminder that even within our own lineage, nature explored forms and structures that seem utterly alien today. A slow-moving herbivore carrying a living billboard studded with crossbars, quietly browsing the fern prairies, another unforgettable resident of evolution's lost world. We leave behind the sail-backed giants of the Permian and leap forward in time, past the cataclysm of the Great Dying, into the early Triassic period, roughly 240 million years ago. Life is recovering, diversifying, filling the empty niches left by the extinction. The archosaurs, ancestors of dinosaurs and crocodiles, are beginning their rise. And amidst this recovering world, evolution continues its strange and wonderful experiments, producing creatures that defy our expectations of how animals should move. Our attention turns now to the skies, or rather the spaces between the trees, in what is now Central Asia. Here, preserved in fine-grained sediments, we find the fossil of a small, utterly unique reptile that seems to have solved the problem of gliding in a way nature has never repeated. Meet Charovipteryx, the Charov's wing, named after its discoverer. Let us try to visualize this extraordinary creature, perhaps clinging to the trunk of an ancient ginkgo tree. It is small, perhaps only 20 centimeters or 8 inches long, with a light, delicate build. It has a long neck, a small head with pointed jaws likely suited for catching insects, and relatively small forelimbs. Its body is covered in scales, clearly identifying it as a reptile, belonging perhaps to an early extinct group called the Protorosaurs, distant relatives of the archosaurs. But it is the hind limbs and the surrounding structures that make Charovipteryx truly exceptional, utterly bizarre. Its back legs are disproportionately long, incredibly elongated compared to its front legs and body, and stretching between these long hind legs, connected perhaps to the tail and possibly even extending slightly beyond the feet, was a broad membrane of skin, a patagium. Imagine this, not wings on its arms like a bird, bat or pterosaur, nor flaps of skin along its sides like a gliding squirrel or lizard. Charovipteryx had its primary gliding surface stretched between its back legs. How could this possibly work? When paleontologists first studied the single known fossil specimen, they were baffled. Reconstructions based on this unique anatomy suggest a creature unlike any other glider known. Charovipteryx likely launched itself from a high branch, perhaps leaping into the air. As it fell, it would extend those incredibly long hind legs outwards and backwards, unfurling the membrane stretched between them. This large delta-shaped surface would act as a wing, catching the air, generating lift, and allowing the creature to glide, perhaps for considerable distances, from tree to tree or down to the forest floor. But what about stability? What about steering? The small forelimbs might have possessed smaller membranes, perhaps between the fingers or connecting the arm to the body, acting like canards or forward stabilizers on an aircraft, helping to control pitch and direction. The long tail might also have played a role in steering or balance during the glide. Picture it now, this tiny reptile launching itself into the Triassic air. Its long back legs snap open, deploying the delta wing behind it. Its small front limbs adjust subtly. It banks, turns, perhaps chasing an insect on the wing, before landing gently on another tree trunk, folding its strange leg wings back against its body. It is a method of flight, or rather gliding, that seems almost counterintuitive, yet the fossil evidence is clear. Charovipteryx represents a unique and apparently short-lived evolutionary experiment in aerial locomotion. Why did this design evolve? Perhaps it offered specific advantages in the Triassic forests it inhabited. Perhaps it allowed for a particular type of maneuverability, or a very stable, slow glide suitable for hunting insects among cluttered branches. And why did it disappear, leaving no known descendants or imitators? Perhaps it was ultimately less efficient, less adaptable than the forelimb-based flight that would come to dominate the skies with the rise of pterosaurs later in the Triassic, and eventually birds and bats. Perhaps its specialized anatomy restricted its movement on the ground, making it vulnerable. Or perhaps its lineage simply fell victim to chance, a localized extinction event erasing this singular evolutionary path. Charovipteryx remains known from only a single, incomplete fossil specimen, adding to its mystique. It is a tantalizing glimpse into a moment when evolution was exploring truly radical solutions to the challenge of getting airborne. It forces us to reconsider the possibilities, to recognize that the ways animals move and fly today are not the only ways that ever existed. To contemplate Charovipteryx is to imagine a tiny reptilian delta wing darting through the ancient forests, a creature that literally flew by the seat of its pants, or rather, by the skin between its legs, a beautiful, bizarre, and utterly unique footnote in the long, strange story of vertebrate flight. We remain for a moment in the Triassic period, that age of recovery and reptilian experimentation following the Great Dying. While Charovipteryx was exploring the possibilities of flight between the trees, another, far larger reptile was pushing the boundaries of anatomy in a completely different, and arguably even more bizarre, direction. This creature haunted the shorelines and shallow coastal waters of the ancient Tethys Ocean, in what is now Europe and the Middle East, around 140 million years ago. Its defining feature was so extreme, so seemingly improbable, that its fossils initially baffled scientists completely. Meet Tanistropheus, the long vertebra. Imagine a reptile perhaps reaching a total length of 6 meters or 20 feet. But this length is distributed in a way that defies all normal proportions. The body itself is relatively modest, perhaps somewhat lizard-like, with 4 sturdy limbs suggesting it could walk on land. The tail is long and tapering, useful perhaps for balance or swimming. But then there is the neck. The neck of Tanistropheus is simply extraordinary. It is incredibly long, slender, and stiff, composed of only 13 greatly elongated vertebrae, and its length is staggering, accounting for roughly half of the creature's entire body length. 3 meters or 10 feet of pure neck, extending from a body perhaps only 2 meters long, excluding the tail. Picture a reptile roughly the size of a large crocodile, but with the neck of a giraffe stretched out even further, mounted on that relatively small body. When the first fossils of Tanistropheus were discovered, consisting often of just those incredibly long, hollow neck bones, paleontologists struggled to understand what they were looking at. Were they the limb bones of some unknown creature? The tail vertebrae of a strange swimming reptile? Some even suggested they might belong to a pterosaur, perhaps forming part of a wing structure. It took the discovery of more complete skeletons to reveal the astonishing truth. This was the neck of a single, bizarre reptile. How could such a structure possibly function? And what lifestyle demanded such an extreme anatomical specialization? The neck vertebrae, though few in number, were incredibly elongated, yet also relatively light, perhaps containing air sacs to reduce weight. However, they were likely quite stiff, offering limited flexibility except perhaps near the base and closer to the small head. This was not a supple snake-like neck capable of intricate movements. It was more like a long, jointed fishing rod extending from the creature's shoulders. The prevailing hypothesis is that Tanistropheus was a semi-aquatic ambush predator, perfectly adapted to hunting in the shallow coastal waters of the Tethys Sea. Imagine it standing or resting in the shallows near the shore, perhaps camouflaged amongst rocks or vegetation, its relatively inconspicuous body hidden beneath the surface or blending in with the land. But that immense neck allowed it to project its small head far out into the deeper water, reaching areas inaccessible to purely terrestrial predators, or allowing it to approach unsuspecting prey without alarming them with the movement of its larger body. Its small head, armed with sharp, pointed teeth in adults, juveniles had different, perhaps insectivorous teeth, was likely adept at snatching fish, squid, crustaceans, or other small marine creatures swimming by. Picture the scene. The body remains still, hidden. The long, stiff neck extends slowly, silently through the water, the small head scanning patiently. A fish swims into range, with a sudden, swift dart of the head and the very end of the neck, the only part perhaps capable of rapid movement. The jaws snap shut. The prey is secured, brought back towards the waiting body. This lifestyle, a sort of living fishing pole, would explain the strange anatomy. The long, stiff neck provided reach and stealth. The small head minimized disturbance in the water. The sturdy body and limbs provided anchorage on the shore or seabed. Evidence supporting this semi-aquatic lifestyle comes from the fossils themselves. Specimens are often found in marine deposits alongside fish and other sea creatures. Some fossils show webbed feet, and interestingly, the tails of some Tanistropheus specimens have been found strangely broken off, leading to speculation that, like some modern lizards, they might have been able to shed their tails as a defense mechanism if attacked by a larger marine predator while hunting. Tanistropheus represents another remarkable and ultimately extinct evolutionary path among the reptiles of the Triassic. It solved the problem of bridging the gap between land and water, between predator and aquatic prey, not by becoming fully marine, but by evolving an anatomical specialization of almost unbelievable proportions. It was a creature seemingly designed by stretching one body part to its absolute limit. To contemplate Tanistropheus is to be confronted with the sheer plasticity of the vertebrate form, the incredible lengths, quite literally, to which evolution will go to exploit an ecological opportunity. It is a creature that seems almost impossible, a beautiful, bizarre testament to the strange and wonderful solutions that life finds. A reptilian fishing rod, patiently waiting by the shores of a lost ocean, its impossibly long neck stretching out across the boundary between two worlds. We leap forward once more, traversing a vast gulf of time, leaving the reptilian experiments of the Triassic far behind. Our journey takes us into the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, which dawned after the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Mammals, having survived the cataclysm, exploded in diversity, evolving into a bewildering array of forms to fill the vacant ecological niches. While many familiar lineages arose, the ancestors of horses, elephants, whales, and primates, this era also produced its own share of evolutionary oddities, creatures that seem almost like chimeras, blending features from unrelated groups. Our focus now settles on the Miocene epoch, roughly 23 to 5 million years ago. We find ourselves perhaps in the open woodlands or savannas of Europe, Asia, or Africa. And here, browsing peacefully among the trees, is one of the strangest mammals imaginable, Chalicotherium. Imagine a creature that defies easy description. At first glance, you might see its head and neck and think perhaps of a horse or maybe an okapi. It has a relatively long, equine-like skull, suggesting a herbivorous diet. But then your eyes travel down its body, and the familiarity dissolves into profound weirdness. Chalicotherium was large, perhaps the size of a modern horse or a large bear. Its front limbs were significantly longer than its hind limbs, giving it a distinct, sloping posture, somewhat like a modern hyena or, perhaps more accurately, a gorilla. And it walked, not on hooves like a horse, nor flat-footed like a bear, but on its knuckles. Yes, knuckle walking. Like chimpanzees and gorillas, Chalicotherium appears to have supported the weight of its front end on the thickened knuckles of its hands, keeping its extraordinary claws off the ground as it moved. And those claws, they were the creature's defining, most baffling feature. Instead of hooves, each front foot bore 3 enormous curved and deeply cleft claws, resembling perhaps those of a giant sloth or a fearsome anteater, but belonging to an animal seemingly built like a heavily modified horse. What possible lifestyle could lead to such an unlikely combination of features? A horse-like head for browsing leaves, gorilla-like arms for reaching or pulling, and giant claws more suited for digging or tearing. Chalicotherium belongs to an extinct group of mammals called Chalicotheres, which are, surprisingly, related to horses, rhinos, and tapirs, the perissodactyls, or odd-toed ungulates. But they abandoned the hooves and running adaptations of their relatives and embarked on a completely different evolutionary path. Scientists believe Chalicotherium was a specialized browser, using its strange anatomy to feed in a way unlike any other large mammal. Imagine it approaching a tree. It might rear up on its shorter, sturdier hind legs, using its long, powerful front limbs to reach high into the branches. Those immense claws were likely not weapons, but tools. Perhaps it used them like grappling hooks, pulling down leafy branches towards its horse-like mouth, stripping off leaves and twigs. Its knuckle-walking gait, while seemingly awkward, would have protected those vital claws from wear and tear as it moved between feeding sites. It was likely a slow-moving creature, relying perhaps on its size and those formidable-looking claws for defense against the predators of the Miocene world, such as saber-toothed cats or large bear dogs. Picture this gentle giant moving through the Miocene woodlands, its sloping back, its long arms resting on knuckled hands, its horse-like head peacefully stripping leaves from a branch pulled down by its huge curved claws. It is a creature of paradoxes, blending features we associate with entirely different ways of life into a single, functional, albeit utterly bizarre, whole. The Chalicotheres were a successful group, surviving for millions of years across several continents. They represent another fascinating example of convergent evolution. evolving gorilla-like locomotion and sloth-like claws independently, but within a lineage fundamentally related to hoofed mammals. They demonstrate the remarkable adaptability of mammals, the ways in which evolution can repurpose existing structures for entirely new functions, creating forms that seem to defy our neat classifications. Chalicotherium eventually vanished, perhaps due to climate change altering its preferred woodland habitats, or competition from other evolving herbivores. It left no direct descendants, but its fossils remain, a silent testament to a time when horse relatives walked like apes and wielded claws like giant sloths. It is another unforgettable creature from evolution's cabinet of curiosities, a peaceful, paradoxical giant browsing the lost forests of the Cenozoic, reminding us that the age of mammals was just as strange, just as full of evolutionary surprises as the ages that came before it. Leaving the strange mammals of the relatively recent Cenozoic behind, our journey now plunges back into truly deep time. Back further than the dinosaurs, further even than the sail-backed synapsids. We return to the Carboniferous period, roughly 340 million years ago. This was the age of the great coal swamps, a world of steaming, lush, planet-spanning forests dominated by towering tree ferns, giant club mosses, and colossal horsetails. And as we explored briefly in a previous journey, this was also a time of exceptionally high atmospheric oxygen levels, perhaps reaching 35%, creating a volatile, supercharged atmosphere. This unique environment allowed for a brief, spectacular flourishing of creatures that, in our modern, thinner air, are confined to the small spaces, the giant arthropods. We glimpsed Meganeura, the griffinfly with the wingspan of a hawk. But patrolling the damp, perpetually shaded floor of these ancient swamps was something even larger, even more unsettling in its scale: Arthropleura. Imagine yourself standing amidst the giant moss-covered roots and fallen logs of a carboniferous forest. The air is thick, heavy, humid, rich with oxygen and the smell of damp earth and decaying vegetation. You hear a sound, not the footfall of a vertebrate, but a continuous rhythmic rustling and scraping, the sound of something immense pushing through the leaf litter. Slowly, deliberately, it emerges from the gloom. Arthropleura. Picture a millipede, or perhaps more accurately, a giant flattened relative of millipedes and centipedes, but scale it up, far beyond anything imaginable today. Arthropleura reached lengths of up to 2.5 meters, over 8 feet, long and perhaps 0.5 meter or 1.5 feet wide. It remains the largest known land-dwelling invertebrate of all time. Its body is composed of numerous overlapping segments, perhaps 30 or more, forming a broad, flattened, heavily armored carapace. Each segment bears a pair of sturdy, jointed legs extending outwards, giving it a total of perhaps 60 legs. Imagine this creature moving. It likely flowed across the forest floor with a slow, powerful, multi-legged gait, its body rippling as waves of leg movements propelled its immense bulk forward. It wasn't fast, but it was inexorable, a living armored train navigating the complex terrain of the swamp floor. Its passage would not be silent. It would be the constant rustle and crackle of dry leaves and twigs being crushed beneath its numerous feet, the scraping sound of its wide, armored body brushing against ferns and fallen logs. What did this giant eat? Despite its intimidating size and armor, Arthropleura was almost certainly not a predator. Fossilized gut contents and trackways suggest it was a herbivore, or perhaps a detritivore, feeding on the abundant, decaying plant matter of the forest floor, fallen leaves, rotting wood, spores, perhaps even soft roots or fungi. Its mouthparts were likely simple, adapted for shredding soft vegetation, not for capturing or overpowering prey. It was a gentle giant, the colossal recycler of the Carboniferous ecosystem. How did it breathe? That immense size, far exceeding any modern terrestrial arthropod, was made possible only by those incredibly high oxygen levels. Its respiratory system, likely a network of tracheae similar to modern insects and millipedes but perhaps larger or more complex, could only function efficiently enough to oxygenate such a large body in that supercharged atmosphere. As oxygen levels began to decline towards the end of the Carboniferous and into the Permian, Arthropleura vanished, unable to sustain its giant size in the thinning air. Did it have any predators? Perhaps the large amphibians, the crocodile-like temnospondyls that lurked in the Carboniferous swamps might have occasionally tackled a smaller Arthropleura. But a full-grown adult, with its thick dorsal armor and impressive size, likely had few natural enemies. Its defense was simply its scale and its passive, protective shell. Fossilized trackways attributed to Arthropleura have been found, showing parallel lines of footprints, sometimes nearly half a meter wide, giving us a direct, tangible sense of these giants moving across the ancient landscapes. Imagine encountering such a trackway, the immense rhythmic pattern stretching across a muddy bank, a silent testament to the passage of a creature almost too large to believe. Arthropleura represents the absolute peak of terrestrial invertebrate gigantism on our planet. It is a creature born from a unique and temporary set of atmospheric conditions, a spectacular but ultimately fleeting experiment in arthropod scale. To contemplate Arthropleura is to be humbled by the sheer strangeness that different environmental conditions can permit. It forces us to reconsider the limits of body size, to imagine a world where the ecological roles typically filled by large vertebrates were occupied, however briefly, by colossal, armored, multi-legged crawlers. A silent, 8-foot giant patiently munching its way through the damp undergrowth of a lost world, breathing air thicker and richer than anything we know today. We remain for a moment longer in the thick, humid, oxygen-rich air of the Carboniferous coal swamps, roughly 300 million years ago. While the colossal Arthropleura patrolled the damp forest floor, the skies above belonged to another giant, an airborne predator of equally astonishing proportions, also fueled by that unique atmospheric chemistry. This was Meganeura, the creature often dubbed the giant dragonfly, though technically belonging to a related extinct group called the griffinflies, or Meganeuridae. Imagine yourself standing in a clearing amidst the towering tree ferns and lycopods. The air is heavy, almost tangible, buzzing perhaps with the sounds of myriad smaller insects. Then you hear it. Not a delicate buzz, but a deep, rhythmic, leathery thrumming, like small rotors beating the air. A shadow, far larger than any modern dragonfly could cast, sweeps across the ground. You look up, and you see Meganeura hawking through the air. Let the scale sink in. Modern dragonflies are marvels of aerial agility, but even the largest species today have wingspans measured in mere centimeters, perhaps 15 at the absolute maximum. Meganeura was of a different order entirely. Fossil remains, particularly exquisitely preserved wing impressions found in Carboniferous coal deposits in France and England, indicate wingspans reaching up to 70 centimeters, nearly 2.5 feet, across. Its body length would have been correspondingly large, perhaps approaching half a meter. Picture this immense insect hanging almost motionless in the thick air, its 4 intricately veined wings beating powerfully, perhaps slightly out of sync, allowing for incredible maneuverability despite its size. Its body is long and robust, likely brightly colored or patterned, similar to modern dragonflies. Its head is dominated by huge, multifaceted compound eyes, providing nearly 360-degree vision, perfectly adapted for spotting movement against the backdrop of the dense forest or the open sky above the swamps. Extending forward from its head are powerful, spiny legs, held basket-like beneath its body, ready to snatch prey from the air. Meganeura was undoubtedly an apex predator of the Carboniferous skies. What did it hunt? In a world without birds or bats, which wouldn't evolve for hundreds of millions of years, the air belonged to the insects and other early arthropods. Meganeura, with its size, speed, and superb vision, likely preyed upon the abundant smaller flying insects of the time. Perhaps it even tackled larger prey, like the first primitive winged reptiles just beginning to emerge, or even small amphibians snatched from near the water's surface. Imagine its hunting style, perhaps patrolling tirelessly back and forth over a swampy clearing, its huge eyes scanning for movement. It spots a smaller insect with an incredible burst of speed and agility, far greater than its size might suggest. It intercepts its victim in mid-air, snatching it with those spiny legs, perhaps consuming it on the wing without even needing to land. Its mastery of flight in that dense, oxygen-rich air would have been absolute. Like Arthropleura, the immense size of Meganeura was almost certainly a direct consequence of the high oxygen levels of the Carboniferous. The simple tracheal respiratory system used by insects, as we discussed, becomes far more efficient in oxygen-rich air, allowing oxygen to penetrate deeper into larger bodies and fuel the intense metabolic demands of flight muscles. Meganeura represents the absolute upper limit of insect size achievable under those unique atmospheric conditions. As oxygen levels began to decline in the subsequent Permian period, these aerial giants vanished, unable to sustain their energy-intensive lifestyle in the thinning air. Their fossils, particularly those beautiful, net-veined wing impressions, are like snapshots from a lost world, a time when insects ruled the skies not just through numbers, but through sheer, breathtaking scale. They evoke a sense of alien grandeur, a different kind of aerial dominance. To contemplate Meganeura is to imagine the soundscape of the Carboniferous, the deep thrum of those giant wings echoing through the humid air, the sudden rush as one darted past in pursuit of prey. It is to picture a world where the familiar roles were reversed, where insects, not vertebrates, were the undisputed masters of the sky. A giant, shimmering hunter patrolling the misty skies above the coal swamps, a spectacular airborne jewel from evolution's high oxygen past. We leap forward again, leaving the Carboniferous giants and their oxygen-rich world far behind. Our journey takes us into the late Cretaceous period, roughly 80 million years ago. We find ourselves in North America, perhaps along the swampy, humid coastlines bordering the western interior seaway, that vast, shallow ocean that split the continent in two. This is the heart of the age of dinosaurs. Tyrannosaurs prowl the western landmass of Laramidia. Duck-billed hadrosaurs browse in vast herds. The world teems with reptilian giants. But the giants were not confined to the land. Lurking in the rivers, estuaries, and perhaps even the shallow coastal waters of this period was a creature that rivaled the largest predatory dinosaurs in sheer size and terror. This was not a dinosaur itself, but a crocodile of truly monstrous proportions, Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile. Let us try to conjure its image, perhaps lying half submerged in the murky water near a riverbank, utterly still, only its eyes and nostrils breaking the surface. Modern crocodiles, like the saltwater crocodile, are formidable predators, reaching impressive lengths of 6 or even 7 meters. But Deinosuchus belonged to a different league entirely. Based on fossil skulls, some measuring nearly 2 meters or 6 feet long, and extrapolations from related species, paleontologists estimate that the largest Deinosuchus individuals reached lengths of 10 to 12 meters, or 33 to 40 feet. This places it among the largest crocodilians ever known, significantly larger than any living species today, and approaching the size of the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex that shared its world. Imagine the sheer bulk of such a creature. Its body would have been immensely powerful, heavily armored with thick, bony osteoderms embedded in its skin, forming a protective shield along its back. Its legs, though likely short and stout, would have supported a body weighing perhaps 5 to 8 tons. Its tail, long and muscular, would have provided immense power for swimming and sudden lunges. And its head. The head was a fortress built for crushing. The skull was incredibly robust, broad, and equipped with jaws capable of exerting bite forces potentially exceeding even that of T-Rex. Lined within those jaws were numerous large, thick, conical teeth, some the size of bananas, designed not just for piercing flesh, but for crushing bone and shattering the shells of turtles. Deinosuchus was undoubtedly the apex predator of its aquatic and semi-aquatic domain. Its immense size and power meant it likely feared nothing. What did it eat? Fossil evidence, including bite marks found on dinosaur bones discovered in the same geological formations, paints a chilling picture. Deinosuchus likely preyed upon the large turtles that inhabited the rivers and estuaries, its powerful jaws perfectly suited for cracking their thick shells. It certainly consumed large fish, but most terrifyingly, it appears to have regularly hunted dinosaurs. Imagine a herd of hadrosaurs, perhaps Critosaurus or Parasaurolophus, coming down to the river's edge to drink. They approach cautiously, scanning the water. But Deinosuchus is a master of ambush, capable of remaining utterly motionless, almost invisible, for hours. As a dinosaur lowers its head to drink, the water explodes. The colossal crocodile lunges with terrifying speed, its immense jaws clamping down on the unsuspecting animal's leg or snout. The struggle might be violent, the powerful dinosaur fighting for its life, but the sheer weight and force of Deinosuchus, combined perhaps with the infamous crocodilian death roll, would likely drag the victim into the water to drown. Bite marks matching Deinosuchus' teeth, found on leg bones and tail vertebrae of large dinosaurs, provide compelling evidence of these terrifying encounters. This creature was not just a river monster, it was a dinosaur killer, occupying a unique ecological niche, bridging the gap between the terrestrial and aquatic realms in the most predatory way imaginable. Its reign lasted for several million years during the late Cretaceous, a period when its specific habitat, warm, shallow, productive coastal environments, was widespread across North America due to the high sea levels. As conditions changed, perhaps as the western interior seaway began to retreat later in the Cretaceous, Deinosuchus eventually vanished, replaced perhaps by smaller, more adaptable crocodilian lineages. But its fossils remain, particularly those immense, terrifying skulls, silent monuments to a time when crocodiles reached sizes that rivaled the largest carnivorous dinosaurs. To contemplate Deinosuchus is to imagine the dangers lurking just beneath the surface of those ancient Cretaceous waters. It is to picture a predator of almost mythical proportions, a true terrible crocodile embodying the raw, brutal power of the reptilian reign at its absolute peak, a silent, armored behemoth waiting patiently in the murky water, the undisputed, bone-crushing king of the shoreline. We jump forward dramatically now, leaving the age of dinosaurs and their colossal crocodilian contemporaries far behind. Our journey takes us much closer to the present, into the Pleistocene epoch, the Great Ice Age, spanning the last 2.5 million years. While vast ice sheets covered the northern continents, other parts of the world remained ice-free, hosting their own unique and often gigantic fauna. Our destination is the continent of Australia. Separated from the rest of the world for tens of millions of years, life here had evolved in isolation, producing a menagerie of creatures unlike any found elsewhere. The marsupials, the monotremes, and their own caste of reptilian giants. And stalking through the woodlands and grasslands of Pleistocene Australia, perhaps as recently as 50,000 years ago, was the largest terrestrial lizard known to have ever existed, Megalania, or more formally, Varanus priscus. Imagine the modern Komodo dragon, the largest living lizard today, a formidable predator reaching lengths of 3 meters or 10 feet. Now, imagine a Komodo dragon scaled up dramatically. Megalania was essentially a giant monitor lizard, a close relative of the Komodo, but built on a truly monstrous scale. Fossil remains, primarily vertebrae, skull fragments, and teeth, suggest Megalania reached lengths of perhaps 5 to 7 meters, 18 to 24 feet, 23 feet, or even more, depending on the estimation method. Its weight might have approached or even exceeded 600 kilograms, or nearly 1,400 pounds. This was a lizard the size of a large saltwater crocodile, but built for life on land. Picture this giant moving through the Pleistocene Australian landscape. Its body is low-slung, immensely powerful, supported by sturdy legs held sprawling slightly outwards. Its long, thick tail acts as a counterbalance. Its skin is likely tough, perhaps covered in scales incorporating small, bony osteoderms for added protection, similar to modern monitors. Its head is robust, housing powerful jaws lined with large, serrated, blade-like teeth, perfectly adapted for slicing through flesh. Like its modern Komodo relative, Megalania likely possessed a venomous bite. Monitor lizards have complex venom glands in their lower jaws, secreting a cocktail of toxins that induce shock, prevent blood clotting, and increase bleeding in their prey. It is highly probable that Megalania, being closely related, shared this potent weapon, adding another layer of lethality to its already formidable hunting arsenal. Megalania was undoubtedly the apex predator of Pleistocene Australia. What did it hunt in this unique ecosystem dominated by giant marsupials? Its prey likely included the colossal Diprotodon, a rhinoceros-sized wombat relative, giant kangaroos like Procoptodon, the strange tapir-like Palocestes, and perhaps even the giant flightless bird Genyornis. Imagine this immense lizard ambushing a Diprotodon browsing near a waterhole. It lunges, its powerful jaws clamping down, serrated teeth tearing flesh, venom beginning its insidious work. Even if the huge marsupial initially escaped, shock and blood loss, induced by the venom, would likely weaken it, allowing the patient Megalania to track it down and finish the kill. It was likely not a fast pursuit predator over long distances, but relied on stealth, ambush, and the devastating power of its initial attack, followed perhaps by patient tracking. Its keen sense of smell, like that of modern monitors using their forked tongues to sample the air, would have been crucial for locating prey and carcasses across the vast landscape. Megalania may also have been an opportunistic scavenger, using its size to drive other predators away from kills. Its presence would have cast a shadow of fear over the entire Pleistocene Australian fauna. It was a predator unlike any other on the continent, a reptilian giant in a world largely dominated by marsupial mammals. Why did Megalania vanish? Its extinction, occurring relatively recently in geological terms, around 40 to 50,000 years ago, coincides intriguingly with the arrival of the first humans in Australia. While climate change at the end of the Pleistocene undoubtedly played a role, altering habitats and perhaps impacting prey populations, the potential impact of early Aboriginal Australians cannot be discounted. Perhaps they hunted Megalania directly or competed with it for prey. Perhaps their use of fire to manage the landscape altered the habitats upon which the giant lizard depended. The exact cause remains debated, a mystery intertwined with the broader megafaunal extinctions that swept across Australia around this time. Megalania represents a different kind of strangeness, not the bizarre body plans of the Cambrian or the sail-backed experiments of the Permian, but the familiar form of a lizard pushed to an almost unbelievable scale. It is a reminder that gigantism wasn't limited to dinosaurs or mammals, that reptiles too could achieve monstrous sizes on land under the right ecological conditions. To contemplate megalania is to imagine the unique, isolated world of Ice Age Australia, a land where giant wombats feared colossal lizards, and where the air carried the scent of eucalyptus and perhaps the subtle metallic tang of monitor venom. A true dragon, not of myth, but of paleontological fact, stalking the ancient bushland. A relatively recent ghost from evolution's gallery of giants. We now journey much further back again, deeper even than the Carboniferous swamps, pushing past the age of the first forests into the Silurian and Devonian periods, roughly 430 to 360 million years ago. This was a pivotal time in Earth's history. Life had firmly conquered the oceans, which teemed with jawed fish, ammonites, and vast reefs. But on land, the conquest was just beginning. The very first small, primitive vascular plants, like Cooksonia, were tentatively colonizing the damp margins near rivers and coastlines. There were no trees yet, no forests, no grasses. The continents were largely barren expanses of rock, gravel, and perhaps thin crusts of microbial life. Yet, scattered across these stark, empty landscapes, standing tall against the ancient sky, were mysterious structures that utterly baffled the paleontologists who first discovered their fossilized remains. These structures looked, for all the world, like the petrified trunks of ancient trees, some reaching heights of up to 8 meters, over 25 feet tall, and perhaps a meter wide. They seemed to represent the very first forests on Earth. But something was deeply wrong. When scientists examined the internal structure of these fossil trunks under the microscope, they found none of the characteristic features of wood: no growth rings, no vascular tissues for transporting water, no cellular structure typical of plants. Instead, the fossils were composed of a dense, interwoven matting of microscopic tubes, filaments only a few micrometers wide, tangled together in a complex, almost felt-like mass. It looked less like wood and more like fungus. This enigmatic fossil organism is known as Prototaxites, and for over a century its true identity remained one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in paleontology. Was it a bizarre, giant alga that somehow learned to stand upright on land? Was it a strange type of lichen? A symbiotic partnership between fungus and alga, scaled up to monstrous proportions? Was it some kind of rolled-up mat of liverworts or other primitive land plants? Or was it, as the microscopic structure seemed to suggest, something truly outlandish, a fungus that grew to the size of a telephone pole? Imagine this landscape. Vast, empty plains of rock and sediment under a perhaps pale, thin sky. Small, green patches of primitive, ankle-high plants cluster near damp areas. And rising sporadically from this barrenness are these immense, greyish pillars, Prototaxites. They stand silent, unmoving, perhaps slightly tapering towards the top. Their surfaces may be textured or slightly wrinkled. They are the tallest things on land, the only vertical structures breaking the monotony of the horizon. They dominate the terrestrial world not through movement or complexity, but through sheer, passive, columnar presence. What were they doing? How did they live? If they were indeed giant fungi, they were likely decomposers, saprophytes, drawing nutrients from the thin, microbially rich soils, or perhaps from decaying mats of algae or early plant life washed ashore. They would have played a crucial role in breaking down organic matter and cycling nutrients in these earliest, simplest terrestrial ecosystems. Imagine them slowly, silently absorbing sustenance from the ground beneath, their immense fungal bodies constructed from countless, microscopic, interwoven hyphae. The debate over Prototaxites' identity raged for decades. The sheer scale seemed impossible for a fungus, creatures we typically associate with mushrooms, molds, or microscopic threads. How could a fungus support such a massive structure against gravity without the rigid lignin of wood? Perhaps the densely interwoven hyphae provided sufficient structural support, like a tightly packed felt. Perhaps internal fluid pressure played a role. The final compelling evidence came relatively recently through sophisticated chemical analysis of the carbon isotopes preserved within the fossilized filaments. Different types of organisms process carbon in slightly different ways, leaving distinct isotopic signatures. The signature found within Prototaxites strongly matched that of fungi, particularly saprophytic fungi that feed on decaying matter, and differed significantly from the signatures expected for plants or algae. The conclusion, though still debated by a few, seems increasingly clear. Prototaxites was, most likely, a colossal fungus. It represents a time in Earth's history when the ecological roles were distributed differently. Before the evolution of large woody trees, perhaps fungi briefly occupied the niche of the tallest thing on land, forming strange, pillar-like structures that dominated the early terrestrial ecosystems for tens of millions of years. As true plants evolved, wood grew taller, formed complex forests, and competed more effectively for sunlight and resources. Prototaxites gradually faded from the scene, vanishing from the fossil record by the end of the Devonian. Its reign was a temporary, albeit spectacular, chapter in the colonization of land. To contemplate Prototaxites is to challenge our fundamental assumptions about what life looks like and what ecological roles different groups can play. It is to imagine a world where fungi, not trees, formed the towering structures on the horizon. A silent, immense grey pillar standing sentinel over a barren landscape, breathing slowly in the ancient air, a testament to a time when the world belonged to giants of a completely different and utterly unexpected kingdom, the mystery mushroom that pretended to be a tree. We leap forward once more, dramatically closer to our own time, leaving the ancient fungal pillars of the Devonian far behind. Our journey takes us into the Pleistocene epoch, the same Ice Age world that witnessed the giant monitor lizard Megalonia in Australia. But our focus shifts now to the subtropical forests and karst landscapes of southern China, Vietnam, and perhaps parts of India and Indonesia, sometime between 2 million and perhaps just 300,000 years ago. Lurking within these forests was the largest primate known to have ever lived, a creature that pushes the boundaries of ape scale to truly legendary proportions. Gigantopithecus blacki. Imagine yourself walking through a dense bamboo forest in Pleistocene Asia. The air is warm, humid. You hear the rustling of leaves high above, the snap of branches. But this is no ordinary sound. It suggests something immense, something powerful, moving through the canopy, or perhaps foraging on the forest floor. Then you glimpse it. Gigantopithecus. Reconstructing this giant is challenging, as its fossil remains are frustratingly scarce, consisting primarily of thousands of isolated teeth and a few massive lower jaw bones found in caves and fissure fillings. No complete skeletons, skulls, or limb bones have yet been definitively assigned to the genus. However, these fragments alone tell an astonishing story. The teeth are enormous, far larger than those of any living ape, including gorillas. The molars are broad, flat, and heavily built, indicating a diet primarily composed of tough, fibrous plant material, likely bamboo, fruits, seeds, and perhaps other vegetation found in its forest habitat. The sheer size and robustness of the jawbones suggest immense chewing muscles were required to process this coarse diet. Based on the size of these teeth and jaws, and by comparing them to the proportions of modern apes, paleontologists have attempted to estimate the living creature's dimensions. The numbers are staggering. Gigantopithecus likely stood around 3 meters, nearly 10 feet, tall when standing upright. though it probably spent most of its time on all fours. Its weight might have reached or even exceeded 500 kilograms or over 1,100 pounds, significantly larger and heavier than the biggest male gorillas today. Picture this colossal ape. Its sheer bulk suggests it was primarily terrestrial, too large and heavy for extensive life in the trees, though younger individuals might have climbed. It likely moved quadrupedally, perhaps knuckle-walking like a gorilla, its immense arms supporting its massive torso. Its body was likely covered in thick hair, perhaps reddish-brown like a modern orangutan, to which it may be distantly related, though its exact position in the ape family tree is still debated. Imagine its presence in the forest. Its immense size would have made it largely immune to predation as an adult. Perhaps only packs of archaic humans, like Homo erectus, who shared its environment for part of its reign, or large predators like saber-toothed cats or giant hyenas, might have occasionally posed a threat, particularly to younger or weaker individuals. Its life likely revolved around the slow, patient search for food. Hours spent stripping bamboo stalks, crushing tough fruits and seeds with those massive molars, moving slowly through its forest territory. Its social structure remains unknown. Did it live in solitary existence like orangutans, or in family groups like gorillas? The fossils offer few clues. Gigantopithecus represents the absolute peak of primate gigantism. Why did it evolve to such immense proportions? Perhaps the abundant food resources in the subtropical forests it inhabited allowed for such growth. Perhaps large size offered better defense against predators or advantages in competing for resources. It was clearly a successful lineage, surviving for nearly 2 million years across a significant portion of Southeast Asia. Why did it vanish? Its extinction, occurring perhaps around 300,000 years ago, is another paleontological mystery. Climate change during the Pleistocene undoubtedly played a major role. As glacial cycles shifted global weather patterns, the subtropical forests Gigantopithecus depended upon likely shrank, fragmented, or changed in composition, perhaps reducing the availability of its preferred food sources, particularly bamboo. Its immense size and specialized diet might have made it particularly vulnerable to these environmental shifts, unable to adapt quickly enough to changing vegetation or find alternative food sources. Competition with other large mammals, or perhaps even pressure from evolving human populations like Homo erectus, cannot be entirely ruled out. Gigantopithecus lingers in our imagination, sometimes invoked in discussions of cryptids like the Yeti or Bigfoot, though there is absolutely no scientific evidence connecting this extinct ape to such myths. Its true significance lies in demonstrating the incredible range of sizes and adaptations achievable within the primate lineage. It is a reminder that our own family tree includes not just agile tree dwellers and tool-wielding humans, but also true giants that once shook the forest floor with their immense weight. To contemplate Gigantopithecus is to imagine the deep, humid silence of an ancient Asian forest, broken by the sound of colossal jaws crushing bamboo. It is to picture the largest ape that ever lived, a peaceful, powerful giant browsing placidly, unaware of the changing world that would eventually lead to its silent disappearance, leaving behind only enigmatic teeth and jaws as proof of its once mighty reign. The true King Kong, not of Skull Island, but of the Pleistocene forests. Our exploration of evolutionary strangeness now takes flight, quite literally, though in a manner utterly unexpected. We journey back to the mid-Jurassic period, around 160 million years ago, to the ancient lake beds and forests of what is now China. Dinosaurs rule the land, feathered forms are becoming increasingly common among the smaller theropods, and the first true birds are perhaps just beginning their evolutionary journey. But amidst this burgeoning world of feathers and flight, one tiny dinosaur took a truly bizarre detour. experimenting with a method of getting airborne that seems borrowed not from birds, but from bats, or perhaps even flying squirrels. Meet Yi Qi, the strange wing. The discovery of Yi Qi, announced to the world in 2015, sent ripples of astonishment through the paleontological community. Known from a single exquisitely preserved fossil specimen, this creature was small, perhaps only the size of a pigeon. It was clearly a dinosaur, a member of a peculiar group of tiny feathered theropods called Scansoriopterygids, known for their long fingers. Like its relatives, Yi Qi was covered in simple brush-like feathers, offering insulation but certainly not capable of powered flight in the way bird feathers are. Its fossil showed the characteristic long fingers, particularly an elongated third finger. But then came the truly astonishing, utterly unique feature. Extending outwards from each wrist was a long, thin, pointed bone, or perhaps a cartilaginous rod, unlike anything seen in any other dinosaur, or indeed any other reptile. This structure, dubbed a styliform element, projected backwards from the wrist, parallel perhaps to the forearm, and preserved alongside this strange wrist rod, and stretching between it, the elongated fingers and the side of the body, were clear traces of a membranous wing, a patagium, a flap of skin. Imagine this. A small feathered dinosaur looking perhaps superficially like a strange long-fingered bird ancestor. But instead of fully feathered wings, its primary flight surface appears to have been a membrane of skin, stretched out not just between its fingers, but supported by this entirely novel extra bone projecting from its wrist. It was a dinosaur that had independently evolved a bat-like or pterosaur-like wing, alongside its covering of simple feathers. How did this creature move through the Jurassic forests? It was almost certainly arboreal, living in the trees, its long fingers and claws well suited for climbing. But the wings, they were likely not capable of powered flapping flight. The anatomy suggests they were used for gliding. Picture Yi Qi perched high on a branch. It launches itself into the air, perhaps leaping towards another tree. It extends its arms outwards, unfurling those strange membranous wings. The styliform rod provides crucial support for the trailing edge of the membrane. The simple feathers covering its body might have offered some aerodynamic benefit, perhaps reducing drag or aiding in stability. It glides silently through the dappled sunlight of the Jurassic forest, perhaps covering distances of several meters, before landing gently on another trunk or branch. It was a glider, but unlike any other known glider, it wasn't using flaps of skin along its sides like a flying squirrel. It wasn't using greatly elongated fingers to support the entire membrane like a bat or pterosaur. It had evolved its own unique composite solution, elongated fingers plus a novel wrist bone plus a skin membrane, all layered perhaps over a body covered in primitive feathers. Why did Yi Qi evolve such a bizarre and complex structure? Perhaps it was an early experiment in aerial locomotion among small dinosaurs, an alternative pathway to the feathered flight that would eventually lead to birds. Perhaps the membranous wing offered certain advantages in the dense forest environment, maybe silent flight or specific gliding characteristics. And why did this design apparently fail, leaving, as far as we know, no descendants and representing a singular short-lived experiment? Perhaps the membranous wing was ultimately less efficient, less durable, or less adaptable than purely feathered wings. Perhaps it constrained movement on the ground or in trees in ways that proved disadvantageous. Maybe its lineage simply succumbed to bad luck, vanishing before its strange potential could be fully realized. Yi Qi remains known from that single, beautiful fossil, a snapshot of evolutionary possibility. It is a profound reminder that the path towards flight was not a single, straight line. Evolution experimented with many different solutions, many different ways of using skin, bone, and feathers to conquer the air. Yi-Chi represents one of the most unexpected, most wonderfully strange of these experiments. To contemplate Yi-Chi is to imagine a tiny, feathered creature with bat-like wings soaring silently between the giant ferns and conifers of a lost world. It is to witness the sheer, almost whimsical creativity of evolution, combining familiar elements, feathers, dinosaur anatomy, with utterly novel inventions, the styliform wrist rod, to produce a creature that seems to break all the rules, a feathered phantom with wings of skin gliding through the Jurassic twilight. We remain airborne for a moment longer, conceptually at least, staying within the realm of feathered dinosaurs and their varied experiments with flight. Leaving the bat-winged peculiarity of Yi-Chi behind, we travel forward slightly in time to the early Cretaceous period, around 120 million years ago. We find ourselves again in the lush, perhaps swampy forests of ancient China, preserved in the remarkable Johol biota fossil beds. Here, evolution's tinkering with feathers and flight produced another truly astonishing and undeniably strange configuration, a dinosaur that possessed not 2 wings but 4. Meet Microraptor. Imagine a small dinosaur, perhaps the size of a modern crow or raven. It belongs to the dromaeosaurid family, the same group that includes the famous velociraptor. Like its relatives, Microraptor has the characteristic sickle-shaped claw on each foot, sharp teeth in its snout, and a long, bony tail. And, crucially, like many dromaeosaurids, its body is covered in feathers. But the feathers of Microraptor are unlike the simple, downy fluff of Yi-Chi or the insulating coat of larger non-avian dinosaurs. Microraptor possessed true, complex, asymmetrical flight feathers, identical in structure to those of modern birds. Feathers with a strong central shaft and interlocking veins, designed to create an aerodynamic surface. And the distribution of these feathers is simply astounding. Not only did Microraptor possess long flight feathers arranged along its arms, forming wings remarkably similar to those of early birds like Archaeopteryx, but it also had equally long, well-developed flight feathers attached to its legs. Its hind limbs, from the thigh down to the ankle, bore a second set of aerodynamic surfaces, creating, in effect, a pair of leg wings. Even its long tail bore a fan of feathers at the tip, likely used for stability and steering. Picture this creature, a small, feathered predator, perhaps perched on a branch. Its arms are wings, its legs are wings. It is, quite literally, a 4-winged dinosaur. How did this incredible creature navigate its world? The presence of true flight feathers strongly suggests Microraptor was capable of some form of aerial locomotion, far beyond simple parachuting. But the exact nature of its flight remains a subject of lively scientific debate. Was it capable of powered flapping flight? Its shoulder structure might have allowed for some degree of flapping, but perhaps not the sustained, powerful flight of modern birds. It likely lacked the deep keel bone needed to anchor large flight muscles. Was it primarily a glider? This seems almost certain. Imagine Microraptor launching itself from a high perch. It extends its arms and legs outwards, creating 4 distinct airfoil surfaces. How were these wings arranged during the glide? Did it hold its leg wings out to the sides, forming a biplane-like configuration? Or did it hold them tucked underneath or trailing behind its body, perhaps using them more for stability or maneuvering? Fossil evidence and aerodynamic models have explored various possibilities, suggesting perhaps a staggered biplane posture offered the best gliding performance. Picture it soaring through the Cretaceous forest canopy. A small, dark shape, feathered on all 4 limbs, maneuvering between the ancient trees, perhaps chasing insects or small vertebrates, or simply moving efficiently from one feeding area to another. Its flight might not have been as dynamic as a modern bird's, perhaps characterized by shallower glides and less agile turns, but it was undeniably airborne. What was the purpose of the leg wings? Were they essential for generating lift? Did they primarily function as stabilizers, control surfaces, or air brakes? Perhaps they played a role in courtship displays, adding to the creature's visual impressiveness. Their presence represents a fascinating and ultimately temporary stage in the evolution of flight. No modern bird possesses functional leg wings, though some, like certain owls, have heavily feathered legs for insulation or silence. This four-winged configuration appears to have been an evolutionary experiment that was eventually abandoned in favor of the more efficient two-winged body plan that dominates avian flight today. Microraptor fossils are remarkably common in the Jehol deposits, suggesting it was an abundant and successful inhabitant of its ecosystem for millions of years. Dozens of specimens, often preserving exquisite feather details, sometimes even stomach contents, revealing diets including fish, birds, and lizards, provide an unparalleled window into its life. Some fossils even preserve iridescent color patterns in the feathers, suggesting Microraptor might have shimmered with glossy black plumage, perhaps similar to a modern crow or grackle. It stands as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the dinosaurian ancestry of birds, showcasing a creature blurring the lines between grounded predator and aerial specialist. It reminds us that the evolution of flight was not a simple linear progression, but involved numerous side branches, experiments, and variations on the theme. To contemplate Microraptor is to imagine the sheer evolutionary creativity unleashed by the advent of feathers. It is to picture a small, shimmering predator drifting silently through the ancient forests on four feathered wings, a beautiful, bizarre, and perfectly functional intermediate step on the long road from dinosaurs running on the ground to birds soaring through the sky, a four-winged phantom of the Cretaceous dawn. We leave the Cretaceous forests and their four-winged inhabitants behind, soaring forward through time once more, across the great extinction event that claimed the non-avian dinosaurs. We enter the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, but also the age when birds, having survived the cataclysm, truly conquered the skies and the seas, diversifying into myriad forms. Our journey now takes us over the vast, open oceans of the Oligocene and Miocene epochs, roughly 25 to 5 million years ago. And gliding effortlessly on the ocean winds is perhaps the largest flying bird known to have ever existed, a creature whose immense scale is matched only by the strangeness of its beak. Pelagornis sandersi and its close relatives, the pelagornithids, often called the pseudo-toothed birds. Imagine yourself adrift on a calm, warm ocean, somewhere off the coast of what is now South Carolina. The sky is vast, the blue punctuated only by distant clouds. Then a shadow falls over you, far larger than any modern seabird could cast. You look up and you see it, Pelagornis. Picture a creature with the general form of a giant albatross or pelican, built for effortless soaring over immense distances. But the scale is simply breathtaking. Fossil remains, including a remarkably complete skeleton discovered during airport construction in Charleston, South Carolina, indicate a wingspan for Pelagornis sandersi estimated at between 6 and 7.4 meters, that's 20 to 24 feet, across. Double the wingspan of the modern wandering albatross, the largest flying bird alive today. Its body, though lightweight for its size, would still have been substantial. This was a true giant of the skies. Its long, slender wing bones were incredibly thin-walled and hollow, optimized for lightness, suggesting it was a master glider, capable of riding the ocean air currents for days, perhaps weeks, at a time, covering vast distances with minimal flapping effort, much like a modern albatross. Taking off might have been a challenge, perhaps requiring a running start into the wind from a cliff edge, or launching itself from the water's surface with powerful leg thrusts. But once airborne, it was likely poetry in motion, a silent, immense shape cruising effortlessly above the waves. But it is the beak of Pelagornis that truly sets it apart, earning it the nickname pseudo-toothed. Lining the edges of its long, slender upper and lower jaws were numerous sharp, pointed projections made not of true teeth, which birds lost early in their evolution, but of bone, extensions of the jaw itself, covered perhaps in the same keratinous material as the beak. These projections varied in size, forming a jagged, saw-like edge along the entire length of the beak. Imagine that immense bird swooping low over the ocean surface. It spots a fish or squid swimming near the top. It dips its head, scoops its prey from the water, and those sharp, bony pseudo-teeth act like spikes, ensuring a firm grip on the slippery meal, preventing escape as the bird lifts its head and swallows. This was not the beak of a filter feeder or a seed cracker. It was the specialized tool of an efficient marine predator, adapted for snatching soft-bodied prey from the surface waters. The pelagornithids were an incredibly successful group, thriving for tens of millions of years, from the Paleocene shortly after the dinosaurs died out, all the way through to the Pliocene, just a few million years ago. Their fossils have been found on every continent, including Antarctica, indicating a truly global distribution across the world's oceans. They were a dominant presence in the marine skies for much of the Cenozoic. Why did they finally vanish? Their extinction in the Pliocene remains somewhat mysterious. Perhaps changes in ocean currents and temperatures affected the distribution or abundance of their preferred prey. Perhaps competition from newly evolving marine mammals, like early seals or dolphins, played a role. Or perhaps they were simply victims of the broader climatic shifts associated with the onset of the Pleistocene ice ages. Pelagornis and its kin represent another fascinating evolutionary experiment, a different pathway taken by birds after the dinosaurs. They achieved immense size, mastered long-distance soaring flight, and re-evolved a toothy grasp using a novel anatomical solution. They were rulers of the ocean skies for far longer than humans have walked the earth. To contemplate Pelagornis is to imagine the vast, empty horizons of ancient oceans, punctuated by the silent passage of these colossal pseudo-toothed gliders. It is to picture wings spanning the width of a small aircraft, casting fleeting shadows on the waves below. It is another reminder of the sheer scale and strange beauty that life can achieve, a giant phantom from the relatively recent past, soaring on phantom winds, its jagged beak a testament to evolution's endless, sometimes unsettling, ingenuity. We remain in the skies for our next creature, but we journey back once more, returning to the late Cretaceous period, the final act in the age of dinosaurs, roughly 70 million years ago. We find ourselves perhaps in the skies over what is now Texas. Dinosaurs roam the land below. Tyrannosaurus might be hunting Edmontosaurus nearby. But soaring high above them, casting an immense and almost unbelievable shadow, is the largest flying creature known to have ever existed. This was not a bird. This was a pterosaur. And not just any pterosaur, but the undisputed king, Quetzalcoatlus northropi. Let the name evoke the image of the feathered serpent god of the Aztecs, a fitting moniker for a creature of such mythic proportions. And the proportions are truly staggering, pushing the boundaries of biological flight to their absolute extreme. Imagine a creature standing on the ground. Its wings are folded tightly against its sides, like immense, leathery umbrellas. It stands perhaps as tall as a modern giraffe, 5 to 6 meters, 16 to 20 feet, high at the shoulder, its head held even higher on an incredibly long, stiff neck. Its body is surprisingly small and lightweight relative to its overall size, but its legs are long and stilt-like, allowing it to walk quadrupedally on the ground, using the knuckles of its wing fingers as front supports, much like a giant, long-necked bat. But it is when Quetzalcoatlus takes flight that its true mind-bending scale is revealed. Unfurling those wings, they stretch to an estimated span of 10 to 12 meters, 33 to 40 feet, across. The wingspan of a small aircraft, like a Cessna. Yet, this immense aerial structure is built not of metal and fabric, but of bone, muscle, and membrane. Picture the wing structure. Like all pterosaurs, the main flight surface is a leathery membrane, the patagium, stretched between the side of the body, and an incredibly elongated fourth finger on each hand. The other fingers are small, perhaps used for climbing or grasping. The wing membrane itself was likely thin but incredibly strong, reinforced internally with stiff fibers called actinofibrils. Imagine this colossal creature launching itself into the air. How did such a giant, potentially weighing several hundred kilograms, even get off the ground? This remains a subject of intense debate. Perhaps it used a powerful leap, pushing off with its strong hind legs and delivering a mighty downstroke with its folded wings simultaneously, vaulting itself upwards like a giant vampire bat. Or perhaps it needed a slope or a running start to gain enough airspeed for takeoff. Once airborne, however, Quetzalcoatlus was likely a masterful soarer, capable of covering immense distances with minimal effort. Its huge wings were perfectly adapted for riding thermal updrafts or exploiting air currents over the late Cretaceous landscapes. Imagine it circling high above, a silent, cross-shaped silhouette against the clouds, its long, toothless beak perhaps scanning the ground or water below for prey. What did this giant eat? Its long neck and pointed, toothless beak have led to various hypotheses. Early reconstructions often depicted it as a vulture-like scavenger, using its height to spot carcasses from afar. Others suggested it might have skimmed the surface of lakes or shallow seas, snatching fish like a giant skimmer bird. More recent analyses, however, comparing its anatomy to modern storks and ground hornbills, suggest a different picture. Quetzalcoatlus may have been primarily a terrestrial stalker. Imagine it walking across the Cretaceous plains on its long legs, its giraffe-like height giving it an excellent vantage point. It uses its sharp eyesight to spot small animals, perhaps baby dinosaurs, lizards, mammals, or other vertebrates, moving through the vegetation below. It stalks closer, its long neck allowing it to strike downwards with surprising speed, snatching its prey with its pointed beak and swallowing it whole. It was perhaps the apex predator of the small to medium-sized terrestrial fauna, a giant stork ruling the dinosaurian undergrowth. Quetzalcoatlus represents the culmination of pterosaur evolution, the absolute peak of size achieved by these flying reptiles before their entire lineage vanished along with the non-avian dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous. They pushed the biomechanical limits of flight in ways that seem almost impossible, creating creatures far larger than any bird that has ever flown. To contemplate Quetzalcoatlus is to stand in awe of the sheer scale that life can achieve, even in the challenging medium of the air. It is to picture a creature seemingly assembled from mismatched parts, the wings of a bat, the neck of a giraffe, the beak of a stork, yet perfectly adapted to its environment. A silent giant soaring on wings the size of sails or stalking patiently across the land on stilt-like legs, the undisputed, almost unbelievable ruler of the late Cretaceous skies. We remain airborne conceptually within the diverse and often bizarre world of the pterosaurs, the flying reptiles that ruled the Mesozoic skies alongside the dinosaurs. While Quetzalcoatlus represented the absolute pinnacle of size, other pterosaur lineages explored vastly different and equally strange ecological niches and feeding strategies. Our journey now takes us back slightly earlier, to the early Cretaceous period, around 105 million years ago, and shifts hemispheres to the southern continents, specifically to what is now South America, primarily Argentina. Here, gliding perhaps over shallow lakes or lagoons, was a pterosaur that adopted a lifestyle remarkably similar to a modern flamingo, equipped with one of the most peculiar dental adaptations imaginable, pterodaustro-guinazui. Imagine a pterosaur, perhaps medium-sized, with a wingspan of around 2.5 meters, or about 8 feet. It has the characteristic lightweight build of a flying reptile, with hollow bones and membranous wings supported by an elongated fourth finger. Its head is long and slender, perched on a graceful neck. But it is the beak, particularly the lower jaw, that immediately captures our attention with its sheer startling weirdness. Picture the skull. The upper jaw is relatively conventional for a pterosaur, perhaps bearing small, simple teeth or maybe even toothless. But the lower jaw, it curves dramatically upwards, like a shallow, elongated scoop or a scythe blade. And lining the upper edge of this curved lower jaw, packed incredibly densely together, are not teeth in the typical sense, but hundreds upon hundreds, perhaps over 1,000 in total, of incredibly long, fine, bristle-like structures. These are modified teeth, evolved into flexible, baleen-like filaments, forming a dense sieve or filter comb along the entire length of the lower jaw. What possible purpose could this extraordinary apparatus serve? The answer lies in its striking resemblance to the feeding mechanism of modern flamingos. Pterodaustro was almost certainly a filter feeder, specializing in straining tiny organisms from the water. Imagine this creature wading perhaps in the shallows of a Cretaceous lake or lagoon, or maybe gliding low over the water's surface. It lowers its head, immersing that strange, upward-curving lower jaw into the water. It likely takes in mouthfuls of water, rich perhaps with tiny crustaceans, plankton, algae, or other microscopic food particles. Then, using its tongue or perhaps slight movements of its jaw, it forces the water out through the dense comb of bristled teeth. The bristles act like a fine mesh sieve, trapping the tiny food items inside the mouth while allowing the water to escape. The captured food is then swallowed. This lifestyle is further supported by evidence found associated with pterodaustro fossils, including tiny gastroliths, or stomach stones, which might have helped grind up the hard shells of small crustaceans consumed through filter feeding. Picture a flock of pterodaustro feeding together along the shoreline, their long necks curved downwards, their bizarre lower jaws sweeping through the shallows, filtering sustenance from the muddy water. Perhaps their plumage or the skin of their wings even bore pinkish hues derived from pigments in the crustaceans they consumed, completing the remarkable parallel with modern flamingos, though this is purely speculative. Pterodaustro represents a stunning example of convergent evolution, where two entirely unrelated groups, pterosaurs and birds, independently evolved highly similar and incredibly specialized feeding adaptations in response to the same ecological opportunity: the abundance of small organisms in shallow aquatic environments. It demonstrates that filter feeding, a strategy often associated with giant whales or delicate invertebrates, could also be successfully adopted by flying reptiles. Its unique jaw structure, that incredible comb of bristled teeth, is unlike anything else known among pterosaurs, showcasing the remarkable diversity of forms and functions achieved by this successful group before their final extinction. They were not all giant stalkers like Quetzalcoatlus, nor all fish snatchers with pointed teeth. Some, like Pterodaustro, became delicate, specialized filterers. To contemplate Pterodaustro is to imagine the quiet shores of ancient South American lakes, populated not by pink birds, but by flocks of gracefully curving, bristle-beaked flying reptiles, patiently sieving their meals from the water. It is another beautiful, bizarre brushstroke in the rich tapestry of Mesozoic life, a testament to evolution's ability to find elegant and sometimes profoundly strange solutions to the simple, universal challenge of finding food. The flamingo pterosaur filtering its breakfast through a comb of teeth. We soar forward once again, leaving the age of flying reptiles and dinosaurs behind, crossing that final fiery boundary 66 million years ago. We return to the Pleistocene epoch, the Ice Age world, but our focus remains on the isolated continent of Australia, that unique evolutionary laboratory. We have already met Megalania, the giant monitor lizard that stalked this land. But Megalania was not the only formidable predator here. Sharing this strange world of giant wombats and kangaroos was a mammal of equally terrifying power, a creature often called the marsupial lion, though it was related to neither lions nor cats. Thylacoleo carnifex. Imagine yourself in the woodlands or open forests of Pleistocene Australia, perhaps 100,000 years ago. The air carries the scent of eucalyptus. You hear the heavy thud of giant kangaroos moving through the undergrowth, or the slow shuffle of a rhinoceros-sized diprotodon. But there is another presence here, a powerful, stealthy hunter perfectly adapted to this unique marsupial megafauna. Picture Thylacoleo. It is not built like a cat despite its nickname. It is a marsupial belonging to the same broad group as kangaroos, koalas, and wombats, carrying its young in a pouch. Specifically, it belongs to the order Diprotodontia, suggesting its ancestors were likely herbivores, perhaps related to possums or wombats. But Thylacoleo took a sharp evolutionary turn towards hypercarnivory, becoming one of the most specialized mammalian predators known. It was a powerfully built animal, roughly the size of a leopard or a small lioness, perhaps weighing up to 130 kilograms or nearly 300 pounds. Its body was robust, muscular, with strong limbs. Unusually for a predator, its forelimbs possessed semi-opposable thumbs, each armed with an enormous, deeply recurved claw, almost like a giant dew claw. Imagine the claws of a cat, but scaled up and perhaps used differently. But it is the skull and teeth of Thylacoleo that reveal its true terrifying specialization. The skull is incredibly short, broad, almost boxy, built for delivering immense bite force. And the teeth, they are unlike those of any placental carnivore like a cat or dog. Instead of prominent canine teeth for piercing, Thylacoleo's most formidable weapons were its incisors, the front teeth. The central incisors were greatly enlarged, forming sharp, dagger-like points. Even more extraordinarily, its cheek teeth, the premolars, had evolved into huge, elongated, blade-like shearing structures like enormous bolt cutters. Its molars, further back, were small and seemingly insignificant. This dental arrangement suggests a feeding strategy focused not on crushing bone or grinding meat, but on delivering incredibly powerful, slicing bites capable of shearing through flesh and perhaps even bone with frightening efficiency. Biomechanical studies estimate Thylacoleo possessed the most powerful bite, pound for pound, of any mammal known, living or extinct. How did this creature hunt? Its robust build suggests it was not a fast pursuit predator like a cheetah. It was likely an ambush hunter, using stealth and power. Perhaps it climbed trees, using those strong limbs and thumb-like claws to gain purchase, dropping down onto unsuspecting prey passing below. A truly terrifying thought. Or perhaps it stalked patiently through the undergrowth, relying on a sudden burst of speed and a devastating initial attack. Imagine it targeting a giant kangaroo or a young diprotodon. It launches its attack, perhaps grappling the prey with those powerful forelimbs and formidable thumb claws, preventing escape. Then, those immense, shearing premolars deliver a catastrophic bite, potentially severing the spinal cord or causing massive trauma and blood loss almost instantly. Its prey needed to be dispatched quickly, given the potential size and power of the giant marsupial herbivores it likely hunted. Thylacoleo was the apex mammalian predator of Pleistocene Australia for potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of years. It was a unique evolutionary product of Australia's long isolation, a marsupial that independently evolved a predatory role filled elsewhere by placental cats, dogs, or hyenas, but doing so with a completely different anatomical toolkit. Its extinction, like that of Megalania, occurred relatively recently, perhaps around 40 to 50,000 years ago, again coinciding with the arrival of humans and significant climate shifts at the end of the Pleistocene. The exact cause remains debated, perhaps loss of its large prey, perhaps direct hunting by early humans, perhaps habitat changes. Thylacoleo stands as a powerful example of convergent evolution, showcasing how similar ecological pressures can lead to similar predatory adaptations, powerful bite, specialized shearing teeth, even in vastly different mammalian lineages. But it also highlights the unique, sometimes bizarre paths that evolution can take. A lion derived from possum-like ancestors, armed with bolt-cutter teeth and grappling hook thumbs. To contemplate Thylacoleo is to imagine the rustle in the ancient eucalyptus leaves, the sudden, terrifying silence before the ambush. It is to picture a predator built unlike any cat, yet ruling its domain with equal, if not greater, ferocity. The marsupial lion, a truly strange and formidable beast from the lost world of Ice Age Australia. Our journey through Mammalian Oddities continues, but we leave the isolated continent of Australia and travel back further in time to the Eocene epoch, roughly 45 million years ago. We find ourselves in the lush, subtropical landscapes of what is now Mongolia. This was a world still relatively early in the age of mammals, a time of evolutionary experimentation, when familiar groups were just beginning to establish themselves, and strange, archaic lineages still walked the earth. And among them, known only from a single colossal skull, is a creature shrouded in mystery, once hailed as potentially the largest terrestrial mammalian carnivore of all time, Andrewsarchus mongoliensis. The story of Andrewsarchus begins with that one spectacular fossil find. In the 1920s, during the famous Central Asiatic expeditions led by Roy Chapman Andrews, hence the name, a truly enormous fossil skull was discovered in the Eocene deposits of Mongolia. Imagine this skull. It is massive, measuring nearly 83 centimeters, almost 3 feet, long, and 56 centimeters, nearly 2 feet, wide. It is elongated, vaguely wolf-like or dog-like in its overall shape, but built with incredible robustness. The jaws are immense, deep, and clearly housed powerful chewing muscles, and lining those jaws are large, strong teeth, prominent canines at the front, followed by relatively simple, blunt but powerful cheek teeth, premolars and molars. Based solely on this immense, predator-like skull, early interpretations painted Andrewsarchus as a truly terrifying supercarnivore. By comparing the skull size to living predators like wolves or bears and scaling up, estimates suggested a creature potentially 6 meters, nearly 20 feet, long, standing perhaps 2 meters tall at the shoulder, and weighing well over a ton. It was envisioned as a gigantic, wolf-like or bear-like beast, the undisputed apex predator of its time, perhaps hunting the large primitive rhinoceros relatives, Brontotheres, and other archaic mammals that shared its Eocene world. For decades, Andrewsarchus held the title, in popular imagination and many textbooks, as the largest meat-eating land mammal ever. But the mystery deepened as scientists tried to place Andrewsarchus more precisely within the mammalian family tree. That single skull, lacking any associated body skeleton, offered limited clues. The teeth, while large and powerful, were not the highly specialized shearing carnassials found in true carnivorans, the group including cats, dogs, bears, hyenas. Instead, the relatively simple blunt cheek teeth seemed more suited for crushing or generalist feeding. Then came the surprising twist. Detailed analysis of the skull structure particularly the bones around the ear region and the jaw joint, revealed features remarkably similar not to carnivorans, but to a completely different group, the artiodactyls, the even-toed ungulates. This is the group that includes modern hippos, pigs, deer, cattle, sheep, and even whales. This placed Andrewsarchus within, or very closely related to, an extinct group of hoofed mammals called mesonychids, which were once thought to be primitive carnivores, but are now often considered to be early relatives of hippos and whales, perhaps omnivorous or even scavenging rather than purely predatory. Suddenly, the image of Andrewsarchus shifted dramatically. Was this giant skull attached not to the body of a colossal wolf, but perhaps to the bulky, hoofed body more typical of its ungulate relatives? Was it truly an active predator, or perhaps a gigantic omnivore using its powerful jaws to crush bones, scavenge carcasses, dig for roots, or maybe even process tough vegetation, like a giant prehistoric pig or entelodont, the extinct hell pigs to which it might also be related? The truth remains elusive without more complete fossil remains. The size estimates based solely on the skull might be exaggerated if its body proportions were more like those of its hoofed relatives rather than a carnivoran. It was undoubtedly a huge animal, one of the largest land mammals of the Eocene, but its exact appearance and lifestyle are subjects of ongoing debate. Imagine this enigmatic giant now, perhaps wandering the Eocene floodplains. Is it a fearsome hunter, bringing down archaic rhinos with its powerful jaws? Or is it a massive scavenger, driving smaller predators off kills? Or perhaps an omnivore, equally content crushing bones, digging for tubers, or browsing on tough plants? Its wolf-like head atop a potentially bulky, hoofed body presents a truly bizarre, almost paradoxical image, a wolf in sheep's clothing, or perhaps more accurately, a wolf in hippo's clothing. Andrewsarchus stands as a powerful reminder of the limitations of the fossil record and the dangers of making assumptions based on incomplete evidence. It highlights how convergent evolution can produce superficially similar shapes like a predator-like skull in entirely unrelated lineages. And it showcases the strange transitional forms that existed early in mammalian evolution, creatures blurring the lines between groups we now consider distinct. To contemplate Andrewsarchus is to embrace paleontological mystery. It is to picture an immense skull, hinting at colossal power, but belonging to a creature whose true form and habits remain shrouded in the mists of deep time. A giant enigma from the dawn of the age of mammals, challenging our classifications and reminding us that the past is full of creatures far stranger and far more surprising than we might initially imagine. We move forward again, leaving the Eocene enigma of Andrewsarchus behind. Our journey takes us much closer to the present, back to the Pleistocene epoch, the Ice Age. But this time, our destination is the isolated continent of South America. For tens of millions of years, South America was an island continent, cut off from North America, allowing its own unique and often bizarre mammalian fauna to evolve in splendid isolation. Here, amidst giant ground sloths, armored glyptodonts, and formidable saber-toothed marsupials, lived one of the strangest hoofed mammals known, Macrauchenia patagonica. Imagine a creature that seems deliberately designed to confuse. At first glance, its body might resemble that of a large camel, or perhaps a hornless rhinoceros, standing perhaps 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with a robust build and surprisingly slender, sturdy legs ending in 3 hoof-like toes on each foot. It appears built for steady movement across the open plains and scrublands of Pleistocene South America. But then your eyes travel up its long, somewhat llama-like neck to its head, and you encounter the profound mystery that defines Macrauchenia. Its skull is unlike that of any living mammal. The nasal openings, the bony holes in the skull where the nose attaches, are not located at the front of the snout, as in horses, camels, or most mammals. Instead, they are positioned incredibly high up, almost between the eyes, near the top of the skull. What could this possibly mean? This peculiar anatomical feature strongly suggests that Macrauchenia possessed something soft and fleshy, extending from this high nasal opening, likely a muscular prehensile trunk, perhaps short like that of a modern tapir or saiga antelope, or maybe even longer and more flexible. Picture this creature now, alive, walking across the Patagonian grasslands perhaps 50,000 years ago. A large, sturdy, camel-like body, supported on three-toed feet, a long, graceful neck, and atop that neck, a head equipped with high-set eyes and extending forward from between them a mobile, sensitive trunk, perhaps constantly twitching, sampling the air for scents, or reaching down to grasp vegetation. It is a truly bizarre combination, the body of a strange ungulate fused with the trunk of an elephant or tapir. How did it live? Its teeth suggest it was a herbivore, likely a browser, feeding on leaves, twigs, and perhaps tougher vegetation. That trunk would have been an incredibly useful tool. Imagine it reaching high into thorny bushes that other grazers couldn't access, delicately plucking leaves, or perhaps extending down to drink from waterholes without needing to awkwardly bend its long neck and legs. Maybe it even used the trunk as a snorkel when crossing rivers or swamps. Its long, slender legs and specialized feet suggest it was also capable of reasonably fast and agile movement, perhaps necessary for escaping the formidable predators of Pleistocene South America, such as saber-toothed cats like Smilodon, giant short-faced bears like Arctotherium, or the fearsome terror birds, Forus racids, that persisted alongside it for much of its existence. Its high-set eyes would have provided a wide field of vision, constantly scanning the horizon for danger while it fed. Macrauchenia belonged to an entirely extinct order of native South American ungulates called Litopterna. These animals evolved for millions of years in isolation, producing forms that convergently resembled horses, camels, and other hoofed mammals found elsewhere in the world, yet retaining their own unique anatomical quirks. Macrauchenia was one of the last and most specialized members of this ancient lineage. It survived until the very end of the Pleistocene, perhaps encountering the first humans to arrive in South America. Like so many other megafauna around the world, its extinction roughly 10,000 years ago likely resulted from a combination of factors: rapid climate change at the end of the last glacial period altering its grassland habitats, and perhaps hunting pressure from newly arrived human populations. Macrauchenia stands as a stunning example of evolutionary convergence and divergence. It evolved a camel-like body and potentially tapir-like trunk independently, yet retained the unique three-toed feet and high-set nostrils of its ancient South American heritage. It is a creature born from millions of years of geographic isolation, a testament to the strange and wonderful paths evolution can take when left to its own devices on an island continent. To contemplate Macrauchenia is to imagine the wind sweeping across the vast, grassy plains of Ice Age Patagonia. It is to picture this strange, trunk-nosed camel llama peacefully browsing, its sensitive trunk sampling the air, its high eyes watchful. It is another beautiful, bizarre masterpiece from evolution's lost gallery, a gentle giant whose strangeness speaks of a world profoundly different from our own, a final, unique flourish from a vanished South American dynasty. We remain in the Pleistocene epoch, the Ice Age world, and our focus stays on the strange and wonderful megafauna of South America, though this creature also successfully migrated north into southern North America during the Great American Biotic Interchange. Sharing the grasslands and open woodlands with the trunk-nosed Macrauchenia was another mammal of equally bizarre appearance, though built on an entirely different principle, not of trunks and long legs, but of impenetrable armor. Meet Glyptodon and its relatives, the Glyptodonts. Imagine an armadillo, Now imagine an armadillo scaled up to the size of a small car, like a Volkswagen Beetle. And instead of flexible bands of armor allowing it to curl up, imagine its back covered by a single, solid, dome-shaped shell made of fused bony plates. This was Glyptodon. Picture this creature moving slowly across the Pleistocene landscape, perhaps 20,000 years ago. It is immense, perhaps reaching lengths of over 3 meters, 10 feet, and weighing up to 2 tons. Its body is entirely encased within that massive, rigid carapace, a dome of fused hexagonal bony scutes, sometimes intricately patterned, rising high above its short, stout legs. Its head, also heavily armored with bony plating, peeks out from the front. Its tail, thick and powerful, is likewise encased in overlapping rings of bone, sometimes ending in related genera like Doedicurus in a terrifying, spiked, mace-like club. Glyptodon was essentially a living fortress, a mammalian tank. Its defense against the formidable predators of its time, the saber-toothed cats, the giant bears, the terror birds, was almost entirely passive, relying on near impenetrability. Imagine Smilodon attempting to bite through that thick, solid bone shell. Its saber teeth would likely find no purchase, perhaps even shatter. The creature could likely retract its head and limbs partially beneath the protective overhang of the carapace, presenting an almost featureless armored dome to any potential attacker. What did this giant, armored beast eat? Its teeth were simple, peg-like structures, lacking enamel, but growing continuously throughout its life to counteract wear. Combined with its robust skull and deep jaws, this suggests Glyptodon was a herbivore, likely a grazer, specializing in consuming tough, abrasive grasses and other low-growing vegetation found on the Pleistocene plains. Imagine it moving slowly, methodically across the grasslands, its armored head low to the ground, cropping vegetation with surprisingly delicate movements for such a massive creature. It likely needed to consume vast quantities of this low-nutrient food to sustain its immense bulk, spending much of its day placidly grazing. Glyptodon belonged to the superorder Xenathra, the same group that includes modern armadillos, sloths, and anteaters, a lineage primarily originating and diversifying in South America during its long period of isolation. The Glyptodonts represented the armored branch of this unique mammalian radiation, pushing the concept of bony defense to an evolutionary extreme. They were incredibly successful, existing for millions of years and diversifying into numerous genera across both North and South America. Why did they grow so large? Like many megafauna, their gigantism likely offered advantages in defense against predators, better thermoregulation in fluctuating climates, and perhaps allowed them to process large volumes of low-quality forage more efficiently. They were the reptilian pariasaurs of the Cenozoic, mammals adopting a strategy of passive, armored defense on a grand scale. Their extinction, like that of Macrauchania and so many other American megafauna, occurred around the end of the Pleistocene, roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago. Again, the exact causes are debated, but the rapid climate changes associated with the end of the last glacial period, altering grassland ecosystems, combined with the arrival and spread of highly efficient human hunters, Paleo-Indians, across the Americas, likely played decisive roles. Perhaps humans hunted Glyptodonts for food, or perhaps their activities altered the landscape in ways that impacted these giant, slow-moving herbivores. Some fossil finds even suggest humans may have used the immense, empty carapaces of Glyptodonts as shelters, a testament to their incredible size and durability. Glyptodon stands as one of the most visually striking examples of extinct megafauna. It is a creature that seems almost fantastical, a mammalian blend of an armadillo, a turtle, and a small car. It showcases the incredible evolutionary creativity that flourished during South America's long isolation, producing armored giants alongside trunked llamas and saber-toothed marsupials. To contemplate Glyptodon is to imagine the slow, steady crunch of tough grasses beneath peg-like teeth, the immense patterned dome of its shell moving placidly across an Ice Age plain. It is to picture a living boulder, impervious, patient, embodying a unique and ultimately successful strategy for survival in a world of giants. The car-sized armadillo, a gentle armored ghost from the lost world of the Pleistocene Americas. Our journey through Strangeness now takes a poignant, almost painful turn. We step away from the deep time of dinosaurs and armored giants, away even from the Ice Age megafauna that vanished 10,000 years ago. We arrive almost in the present day to contemplate a creature whose strangeness lies not just in its unique biology, but in the tragedy of its recent human-driven extinction. We travel to the island of Tasmania, off the coast of Australia and into the 20th century, to meet the last ghosts of the Thylacine, the creature commonly known as the Tasmanian tiger or Tasmanian wolf. Imagine a creature that seems like a confusing blend of familiar animals. At first glance, it looks remarkably like a medium-sized dog or wolf, with a slender body, long legs built for endurance, and a canine-like head with powerful jaws. It stands perhaps 60 centimeters tall at the shoulder and measures nearly 2 meters from nose to tail tip. Its fur is short, yellowish-brown, marked distinctively across its back and hindquarters with 12 to 20 dark, transverse stripes, earning it the tiger moniker. But Thylacine was neither a dog nor a tiger. It was a marsupial belonging to the same broad group as kangaroos and koalas, carrying its young in a pouch, present in both females and, unusually, rudimentary in males as well. It was, in fact, the largest carnivorous marsupial of modern times, the apex predator of Tasmania following the extinction of Thylacoleo tens of thousands of years earlier. It represents another stunning example of convergent evolution, where a marsupial lineage independently evolved a body form and ecological role remarkably similar to placental canids like wolves, filling the niche of a medium-sized cursorial running predator in the Australian ecosystem. Picture this creature moving through the Tasmanian forests or grasslands, perhaps at dusk or dawn, its primary hunting times. It likely hunted singly or in pairs, relying not on sheer speed like a cheetah, but on stamina, pursuing prey like wallabies, kangaroos, bandicoots, and perhaps birds over considerable distances until the victim tired. Its jaws, while superficially dog-like, could open to an unusually wide gape, perhaps useful for delivering a killing bite to the neck or skull of its prey. Its stiff tail acted as a counterbalance during pursuit. Its strangeness extends beyond just being a marsupial wolf. Reports from observers who saw the animal alive described a stiff, somewhat awkward gait compared to a dog and an unusual ability to briefly stand or hop on its hind legs, perhaps for observation. Its calls were described as guttural coughs or barks. The Thylacine once roamed not just Tasmania, but also mainland Australia and New Guinea. However, competition with the dingo, introduced by humans to the mainland thousands of years ago, combined perhaps with changing climate and human activity, led to its extinction everywhere except the isolated island of Tasmania. Here, it survived into the modern era, coexisting uneasily with the arrival of European settlers in the 19th century. Tragically, the Thylacine was quickly, and wrongly, demonized as a major threat to sheep farming. A bounty was placed on its head, leading to relentless hunting, trapping, and poisoning. Habitat loss, disease, and competition with introduced dogs further decimated the already stressed population. The decline was swift and brutal. By the early 20th century, the Thylacine was critically endangered. The last known wild individual was shot by a farmer in 1930. And the very last known Thylacine on Earth, a male named Benjamin, died alone in captivity in the Hobart Zoo on September 7, 1936, ironically just 2 months after the species had been granted official protection by the Tasmanian government. No confirmed sightings have occurred since. The thylacine is gone. Its story is a stark and recent reminder of the devastating impact humans can have on biodiversity. It represents not just the loss of a unique and fascinating creature, but the silencing of an entire evolutionary lineage, the end point of millions of years of marsupial adaptation. The strangeness of the thylacine today lies partly in its convergent form, but mostly in its ghostly presence. We have grainy black and white photographs, flickering old film footage of Benjamin pacing his enclosure, preserved pelts and skeletons in museums, and Aboriginal rock art depicting the creature from a time when it still roamed the mainland. It is a tangible ghost, a creature lost not to deep time, but to human ignorance and persecution within living memory. To contemplate the thylacine is to feel a different kind of quiet. Not the profound silence of the deep past, but the aching silence of recent absence. It is to imagine the damp chill of a Tasmanian night, hoping to catch a glimpse of those distinctive stripes moving through the shadows, only to realize that the creature is no longer there. A recent phantom, a striped ghost haunting the edges of our modern world, a tragic symbol of extinction in our own time. Our journey through evolution's gallery of strange and wonderful extinct creatures draws towards its close. We have met beings with 5 eyes, jaws like spiral saws, bodies encased in impenetrable armor, and wings made of skin stretched between legs. We have marveled at the sheer scale of giant insects, colossal apes, and flying reptiles the size of giraffes. We have glimpsed the bizarre beauty of life's endless experimentation, the myriad forms that flourished and faded across the immense canvas of deep time. But as we stand now, contemplating these recovered ghosts, these fragments pieced together from silent stone, we must also acknowledge a profound and humbling truth. The creatures we have met tonight, the ones whose names we know, whose forms we can reconstruct, represent only an infinitesimal fraction of the life that has ever existed on this planet. They are the lucky ones, the ones whose bodies, by sheer chance, happened to die in the right place, at the right time. Buried quickly by sediment, protected from decay, their hard parts slowly replaced by minerals, preserving some echo of their form for us to find millions of years later. Fossilization is not the rule. It is the vanishingly rare exception. Think of the sheer, unimaginable number of organisms that have lived and died on Earth over the past 4 billion years. Trillions upon trillions of individual lives, countless millions of distinct species, each playing its part in the great evolutionary drama. The vast, overwhelming majority of them left absolutely no trace. They lived perhaps in environments where fossilization is almost impossible. Upland forests where carcasses decay quickly, open oceans where bodies are consumed or dispersed before they can reach the preserving depths, acidic soils that dissolve bone and shell. They possessed bodies made entirely of soft tissues, like jellyfish, worms, slugs, countless forms of plankton and microbes that decay almost instantly, leaving behind not even a whisper in the rock record. They belonged perhaps to lineages that were rare, geographically restricted or short-lived, never achieving the abundance or widespread distribution needed to increase their chances of stumbling into the fossil lottery. For every Opabinia we find, how many equally strange, soft-bodied Cambrian experiments vanished without a trace? For every Tanystropheus, how many other reptiles with bizarre proportions lived and died unrecorded? For every Gigantopithecus tooth, how many other giant primates left nothing behind? The fossil record, the book from which we read the story of past life, is not a complete encyclopedia. It is a tattered, fragmented manuscript with perhaps only one word legible on every 1,000 pages. The vast majority of the story is simply missing, lost forever to the erosive forces of time, decay, and geological recycling. Imagine the creatures we will never know, forms perhaps even stranger, even more beautiful, even more baffling than anything we have encountered tonight. Life solves problems in ways we cannot always predict. Evolution explores pathways that might seem utterly illogical to us. What wonders, what marvels of biological engineering, what unique solutions to the challenges of existence lie forever hidden in those missing pages? We can only speculate. We can only allow our imaginations to wander through the immense, silent library of lost life. Perhaps there were creatures that communicated with light in ways we cannot conceive. Perhaps there were symbioses, partnerships between organisms that created forms utterly alien to our experience. Perhaps entire ecosystems, built on chemical foundations we don't yet understand, rose and fell in the deep oceans or beneath the ancient continents, leaving no fossil signature. The strangeness we have found, the 5 eyes, the buzzsaw jaws, the leg wings, serves as a tantalizing hint of the true, unfathomable depth of life's forgotten diversity. It suggests that the reality of the past was likely far richer, far weirder, and far more complex than even our most imaginative reconstructions can capture. To contemplate the ones we never found is to embrace the profound mystery that lies at the heart of paleontology. It is to acknowledge the vastness of our ignorance in the face of deep time. And it is to cultivate a sense of quiet wonder, not just for the strange creatures we can glimpse, but for the infinite, silent multitude of lost forms that forever elude us. The greatest strangeness of all may lie not in the fossils we hold, but in the echoes of the lives that left no echo at all, the silent, invisible majority of evolution's lost children.